My watch, Johan, are we ready to go?
Ready to go, and it appears that we do have a quorum. Chair, we may proceed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and interested guests that were invited to our meeting. This is the Standing Committee on Mobility. May I say the first meeting of the Standing Committee on Mobility. And today is the 4th of April, 2023. It's a meeting whereby we are going to receive an update from the department in terms of its readiness for the Easter road safety campaign. Thereafter, we're going to have two briefings. One, a briefing by the National Department in relation to the National Department of Transport on the National Road Traffic Amendment Bill. And the second presentation will deal with the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. Thereafter, the committee will then deliberate on its own as to how we're going to take the process forward. So before we start the meeting is being held via MS Teams. It is being broadcast live on YouTube, and our members and the public, particular members, are conversant with the rules applicable to meetings conducted via MS Teams. I wish not to repeat those rules, but if need be, at some stage where the rules are being violated, I will make members aware of such violation. But before we start and get done with the business of the day, my name is Derek America. I'm the chairperson of this committee, and with us in this meeting are also members that's part of this committee, and I will give an opportunity for the members to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. My name is Sean August. I'm a member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, afternoon, ministers and the members of staff in meeting. My name is Lulama Mvimbi, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, Chair. Andrikus van der Westhuizen.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, honorable members. Good afternoon to our guests and everyone and officials. My name is Isaac Mbulelo Sileku, member of the committee. Thank you.
Any other members present? If not, we are curated, and thank you, members, for introducing yourselves. Johan, do we have any other apologies, perhaps, that we may be aware of, unaware of?
No, Chairperson, no other apologies.
Okay, thank you, Johan. So, the order of business for today would firstly be, we will allow the department to brief the committee on its Easter road safety campaign and its readiness to deal with the increased volume of traffic on the road. And we're going to be led by, amongst others, the Minister. Welcome, Minister McKenzie, to our meeting formally. And then we are also joined by the Acting Head of Department, Ms. Advocate Reinecker, and also Ms. Chetty, who's the Director of Traffic Law Enforcement. After the briefing, I will allow an opportunity for members to ask questions for clarity, and we take it from there. And then the second part of the meeting will deal with the two bills that I have mentioned earlier. And there we have Advocate Mahatu from the National Transport Department, as well as Mrs. Sukudu. Then we also have representative present from the Department of Premier, Mrs. Sierra is the State Legal Advisor, and Mr. Van der Skype is also a State Legal Advisor. And then from the Provincial Parliament, sorry for that, is Advocate Leroux, a Senior Legal Advisor. We have Mr. Odendaal, who's the Senior Officer Communications, and then we have Mr. Kailetu Makunyana, who's also a Senior Public Education and Outreach Official. Then we also have the privileged colleagues to have representatives of SALGA in our meeting, delegation consisting of Councillor Carl Pint, Councillor Paul Swart, Ms. Chantal Harkoven, sorry if I mispronounce your name, please forgive me. And also we have Mr. Luisa Njamela from SALGA. So I will also provide them as we progress and we deal with the bills if they also wish to make an input as far as bills are concerned. So, colleagues, that brings us now to the first part of the agenda. Is there any other person or persons in the meeting who I have not sort of acknowledged, other than the official Siraj, who is dealing with the technical aspects of our meeting, and also Mfundo, who is dealing with administrative elements of our meeting? Is there any other persons that we may have in the meeting that is of interest, of relevance? If need be, then when we get to it, then we can possibly introduce each other if there's input from whoever is in the meeting that I have not sort of acknowledged. With that said, colleagues, I'm going to hand over to the Minister. Mr. Mackenzie, over to you. And we're dealing now with the first part of the agenda, and that being the readiness plan for the Easter weekend. Over to you, Minister Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to the Standing Committee. If I may, can I just get my officials to introduce themselves so we know who's in the meeting? And then I'll just make some opening remarks and I'll hand over to one of them who will do the presentation. I see mine, Mr. Reinicke is here.
Good morning, Kyle Reinicke, the acting head of the Mobility Department.
Good morning, Chairperson, Minister, and members. Yasir Ahmed, I'm Chief Director for GMT and Transport Regulation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Beji Teti, Acting Director for Provincial Traffic.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and colleagues. Ricardo Collins, the Director responsible for land transport contracts within the Mobility Department. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Minister. Please.
Thank you, colleagues. Chairperson, yes, this weekend is the Easter weekend. Is one of the busiest periods of the road, other than obviously over the festive period. And we are looking forward to reducing road deaths on the road. As you know, last year the department did an incredible job in reducing road death by over 30%. And we hope, and the work that is done by our traffic department officials and everyone else in the mobility department will contribute to road reductions. And that is the plan that we have that's going to be presented to the Standing Committee. Over the last few days, including just this morning, we had a meeting with our transport partners yesterday. They attended the launch with us of our Easter weekend safety. And just this morning, we had a meeting with the long-distance bus operators where various matters were discussed, including our safety plan. So there you look at Intercape, Alvirda, every credible long-distance bus operator attended our meeting this morning. And we hope that the plans that we presented to them and some of the advertisements and social media graphics that you'll see going forward to the next few days will continue to reduce road death on the road, because we want to live, we want people to live longer in our province and in the country. And what we've also offered is what you'll see in the presentation. It's a free testing service. It's the first in the country, and the first time that we're offering it to reduce road deaths and road carnage that we see on our roads. Reducing that far. Chairperson, can you hear me now?
I can hear you clearly now. Please proceed.
Okay, let me switch off the camera and I'll do that. So it seems like our bandwidth is a bit low the side, but what I'll do is, without further ado, let me hand over to our technical officials and they'll take you through our presentation.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start by mentioning that that VG Chetty will be the person responsible for giving the presentation, and that we, as you mentioned in the beginning, we'll only be concentrating on the Easter road safety launch and not other aspects of your letter, which dealt with the public transport matters and particular the hazards within the taxi industry. So we're going to skip right to that section in the middle of the presentation, and VG Chetty will be giving it. And then for the other parts of the briefing, Chair, the national briefings, we will have representation throughout from our department in those national briefings, but not everybody will be present at all times, if that's okay with you, Chair.
It's fine with me. Thank you, Advocate Reiniger. You may proceed.
Good afternoon once again. Can everyone see my screen?
I can see it, Advocate Ms. Chetty.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, ministers as part of the committee, Minister Mackenzie, HOD, and all other protocols observed. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you the department's intention for Easter. Chairperson, the Easter period for our department, our mobility department, is not only restricted to the Easter long weekend, but we've extended it towards the Freedom Day long weekend as well. And that's what we've considered from our side in terms of the tactical approach for the period in question. But thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to go into the presentation.
You're welcome. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just thought I'd just share the overarching responsibilities in terms of the traffic management component, which is solely responsible for the management or the regulation of law enforcement activities in the province. Traffic law enforcement will be out there doing our enforcing and regulating in terms of compliance towards safer roads. We've got our other directed traffic training and development, who does, prepare our workforce in terms of the execution of our duties. And it links to Minister Mackenzie's in his opening statement, where he referred to the free and voluntary vehicle testing campaign that we're busy with. So our colleagues at Traffic Training and Development have spearheaded that campaign for us with the assistance of the other two components, traffic law enforcement and road safety. Our third component, road safety management, they are responsible for doing our education and awareness campaigns, and it's not just restricted only to Easter. As a chief directorate, we take a 365-day approach towards road safety and towards the reduction of fatalities, as well as the minimizing of road crashes on the Western Cape roads. Chair, I just thought I'll include some graphics in terms of what the team is responsible for doing. You are aware as the Chief Directorate, and I know your counterparts have attended one or two of our operations, where you've seen the demonstration in terms of our technical abilities from a technology and a systems approach. And we heavily thrive on this, colleagues, because it's become the backbone in terms of how we operate these days. And it just creates a more seamless service that we can offer to the citizens of the Western Cape. I've just got some info in terms of, what we do at our weighbridges, our road safety team in terms of their awareness campaigns where they join us at roadside activities, and also the very prominent problem that we have on, not just in the Western Cape, but I think as a country as a whole, in terms of drinking and driving. And that's one of the screening devices that we use in terms of our roadside activities. Ultimately, our objective is heavily linked to the long-term objective in terms of, seeing those road fatalities reduction by 50% by 2030. And for the last 2-3 years, we've really strove in terms of getting those numbers down. And we also had a very, a very intensified COVID period, which we also needed to consider as part of, our tactical approach in reducing fatalities. But I would believe, and I'm strongly confident, that we are headed in the right direction with the significant reduction that we've seen over the December-January period. The team is highly motivated in terms of, slowly month on month edging closer in terms of reaching our objective by 2030. And if I can just allude to the diagram, this is a very realistic picture for traffic law enforcement, in the sense that we're fully aware that our pedestrian fatalities, week on week, we see how high those fatalities are on our roads. And we actually are embarking on a pedestrian strategy, which we're hoping that it will bring those numbers down in terms of the pedestrian fatalities. However, it's not limited to us executing our duties to save all road users. But the most vulnerable ones comes up, week on week in terms of our statistics. But from a Chief Directorate point of view, we are strongly working towards that pedestrian strategy so that we can see the numbers reduce in the vulnerable categories. And then this illustration, Chair, just represents our comparative figures for the last 2 years. And even though we were also partially in the COVID period last Easter, we've got to, as a team, have an objective towards what we're working towards. And this type of communication has also been shared with our operational teams so that they understand, Easter is a very short period. It's a matter of 4 days, but it carries, sometimes, even if we do the comparisons, more traffic volumes in terms of the December period over a weekend. So we are very much sensitive in terms of the goal that we need to achieve this year in terms of reducing fatalities. And as you can see, we lost 36 people in the year 2022, and that is overall for the province in terms of municipal and provincial routes. So my team and I are very committed. We're going to be very stringent in terms of how we do our deployments over this period, starting as of tomorrow. Thursday morning, the 6th of April, where we're actually expecting the volumes of traffic to start, the movements to start in terms of entering and leaving the province. And then just to clarify our operational period, as I mentioned, it will run right up until the 2nd of May, which covers our Freedom Day weekend. In terms of national reporting, it's applicable from the 7th of April till the 10th of April. And that's how we would do our comparative analysis in terms of whether we see a reduction or not this Easter. But I'm very optimistic that we will. Our approach, in summary, is as explained, Chair. We take our job very seriously. It's not just that our officers are present and prevalent over December and Easter periods, but it's on a month-on-month strategy that we run in terms of the focus areas, in terms of the priorities that are worked out for the month. So we take a 365-day approach towards road safety. And it's always been a collaborated function or approach in terms of, we've got our Chief Director that works closely together, but we've also got our internal and external role players that plays a critical part in terms of planning and execution. We do our planning on a quarterly basis, so April forms part of Q1 of 2023. Our operations and interventions over this period is very focus driven in terms of the analysis done, in terms of the last couple of years. What are the major areas that we need to concentrate on? And our operations are focus driven in that direction. And as I mentioned, it's a month-on-month comparative analysis that we do on fatalities, and this is shared with the operational teams so that they can start acclimatizing themselves that, it's fatalities that we need to monitor and manage on a month-to-month basis and not only over Easter and December. We've got very good collaboration with our colleagues from SAPS as well as our interprovincial counterparts. That will be the Eastern Cape and the Northern Cape. And already as of the 5th of April, tomorrow, we've got interprovincial operations that are on the go into the Easter period as well. What we also try to do from an internal perspective is to do monitoring and evaluation of these interventions so that we can have an objective look after Easter to see if, did the plans work? Did the operations or was the operations planned correctly in terms of date, time, and in terms of what the road environment also held at that given time. Chair, we also strive as a Chief Director to do continuous reviewing of the type of methodologies we're using at traffic law enforcement and at road safety management. It's got to meet the current demands in terms of what the road network presents to us at any given time. Some of the key operational focus areas, and this remains our priorities in terms of the major challenges that we experience with our road users: alcohol enforcement, speed enforcement, driver and vehicle fitness being one of the priorities that we've kicked off our Easter campaign with, in terms of offering that free and voluntary vehicle fitness campaign exercise at Jean Low Traffic College. And that will be applicable. It started as of the 1st of April. And we're doing those roadworthiness checks right up until the 5th. And obviously from the 6th onwards, it's normal business as usual in terms of what we do as traffic law enforcement. So we will not be offering the free and voluntary, not the voluntary, but it'll still be free, but it will be compulsory testing, where we'll have our officials from the roadside activities identifying vehicles that are unroadworthy and channeling them through to the VTS to be tested. So that's going to continue for the month of April. And then, this is our time where we see a lot of public transport operations. And as Minister explained, there's been lots of engagements with the taxi industry as well as the long distance public operators, as we did this morning. Also just to re-inculcate to them that, they've got a responsibility to play in terms of it's not just a law enforcement responsibility, but it's an individual as well as the operator's responsibility for safety on our roads. We will also be continuing with our fatigue management operations, and that is very, it's planned strictly in terms of what we predicted in terms of the times that those traffic volumes will either be entering or leaving the province. We've got it on all our major routes, the N7, the N1, as well as the N2. But it differs in terms of traffic volumes, so the date or the time might not be the same for every respective corridor. One of the other challenges that we face on our roads is moving violations. The unnecessary overtaking, the impatience of drivers, the reckless and negligent part of the human behavior of our drivers. So that is something that we'll be heavily concentrating on all the major routes as well. From a road safety education perspective, in comparison to the statistics that I displayed earlier, these are some of the awareness programs that road safety management will be taking on. Starting with our pedestrians in terms of education and awareness that this is a critical period, in terms of them even being on our roadway, which is not allowed, but also, we can't help the social economic situation or the geographical layout of communities. So from our side, we're trying to create that awareness in terms of them, firstly, also not being distracted while they're walking, to also not be drunk and walking on our routes, which makes them more vulnerable, but also to also be vigilant in terms of the other road users that makes use of the road space as well. Then freight awareness, Chair, we're covering the focus of our heavy motor vehicle industry, which also operates at 365 days. These days, they do not shut down at any given time. So we're fully cognitive of the fact that we could have a lot of heavy motor vehicle traffic with our tourists that are, touring the province as well as entering or leaving the province at any given stage. So we've got freight awareness that will be hosted mostly at our weighbridges to see to the wellness of our heavy motor vehicle drivers, and to also engage with them in terms of, encouraging the rest periods in between, and not just, fulfilling the one trip, if they're coming from Johannesburg without stopping straight through to the Western Cape. One of our other vulnerable road user groups are the motorcycle community chairperson, and we've had quite a few awareness programs leading up to Easter as well. And then our driver and passenger awareness, it's not just the driver of the vehicle that needs to be educated, but also the passengers in terms of, ensuring that you are buckled up, also not to distract the driver while the driver's on the long road, etc., in terms of the passenger responsibility. And then all our other vulnerable road user awareness, like our child pedestrians, people that are cycling in this period as well. So those are the awareness campaigns that Road Safety Management has embarked on and will continue for this month of April into the 1st and 2nd of May. And then just to clarify our critical periods that we will intensify our deployments and our interventions for Easter, we actually kicked off as early as the 31st of March in consideration to the school closure that occurred on the 31st, which already saw our traffic volumes pick up in terms of, a lot of people avoiding the Easter weekend rush so that they've already taken the road in terms of their destinations. But our critical periods for this month of April and May would be from the 6th till the 11th of April, being the Easter weekend, where we predict the most amount of movement, but also in due consideration that we are extending our Easter weekend in terms of our deployments to the 11th, purely because schools reopen in the Western Cape on the 12th of April. So, the 10th is the public holiday, but we'll be intensifying the Tuesday as well, just to make sure that our schoolgoers also return to the province safely. And then the last weekend of priority, or the last period, would be the Freedom Day weekend, which also starts the Thursday up until the 2nd of May, where we can also expect huge volumes of movement in and out of the province. In terms of our road safety Easter launch that Minister also alluded to, I thought I'll just include it in the presentation to just brief the members here today that it was purely based on the theme of personal responsibility for April 2023, and the exercise that we've had running from the 1st till the 5th to offer the free and voluntary testing to all types of motorists. And, it was not restricted to a vehicle class, because it's a A-grade testing facility, which means we can test all classes of motor vehicles. And we really hope that through all our campaigning and our communication strategies, that our motorists out there will take full advantage of this voluntary testing that we're doing. It's just to improve their knowledge about what's wrong with their vehicles, and to afford them the opportunity to, to fix it or to attend to it before they take the long road. We also saw it as an opportunity to improve the perception, that we're not just there to give punitive law enforcement measures to motorists, but we also want to encourage partnerships that we start building partnerships with our road users, so that everyone can start understanding that road safety is everyone's responsibility. Our official Easter launch took place yesterday on the 3rd of April at the G and Low Traffic Facility, where our minister was also prevalent to be part of those vehicle testing, and where he also encouraged the taxi industry to be actively involved and for them to utilize this facility till the 5th of April in terms of the services rendered. That's just to highlight some of the social media campaigning that we had leading up to the 1st of April, where our team from Safely Home was very heavily involved in discussions. They found the most applicable way to share this information with the public, also understanding that, there's a level of fear of motorists if it's voluntary testing, because nobody wants to see their vehicle discontinued and they can't hit the road come Easter, because we will either discontinue the vehicle for unroadworthiness. But we had to find a strategy and a way to explain to the public that it's a voluntary service. We want to work with you. We want to just show you what's wrong with your vehicle. So we will not be discontinuing your vehicle between the 1st and the 5th of April. And so far, Chair, if I can just have a quick reflection on the last 3 days as well as today, we are seeing more people and more motorists coming through for that free and voluntary testing. So it's actually quite successful in terms of the take-up. We also engage with schools so that it can reach the learners through the parents on the D6 communicator. And a lot of people have been calling into the college to make inquiries about that as well. And we had several radio stations in and around the northern suburbs as well as the greater part of the Western Cape to actually announce this free and voluntary testing. And then some of our photos that we've captured over the last 3 days as part of the VTS campaign. You can see, it was very interactive with our motorists, where we allowed them to be part of the test, to identify and show them, what was wrong with the vehicle. We also had our partners from the South African Optometrics Association joining us to also share the critical aspect of having your eyes tested, that you should not assume that your night vision is the same as your day vision. So there was a lot of awareness created about eyesight and the care that you need to also give to your eyesight, because it's a critical sense that you need to actually have while you're driving. Some of the challenges that we are expecting during the Easter period, like any other heavily volumes of traffic weekend or weekends, that I can call it, like your month-end weekends and your festive periods, we are expecting a lot of congestion entering and leaving the province. We also had to take into consideration there's major events being planned in the province during this period, and not just movement of traffic. So we're also expecting the metropole area to be quite busy in terms of those events. We are looking at the freight movement, as I explained to you earlier, because that's not going to shut down as an industry. I think most of our prevalent commute will be done by public transport vehicles. So that will be remain one of our priorities as well as our challenges for the Easter period as well. What we see prevalent on our major routes, and specifically the N1, a lot of broken down motor vehicles on the major routes. But our partners at SANRAL have assured us that, they will assist wherever possible to remove those broken down vehicles, to a nearby safe area, so that it does not impede on the traffic flows or it doesn't cause any secondary accidents. Then, Chair, just to include, as I mentioned earlier, the pedestrians and motorcyclists will remain our most vulnerable road users. But we've got our work cut out in that category in terms of, taking them by the hand to actually create that awareness already. And then, Chair, what we also see is a lot of fatigued drivers. It's a very short weekend, so people do not rest. They spend a lot of time, more time traveling than actually spending with their families outside of the province. So therefore, our fatigue management operations at those strategic points. We also, will expect, like it's been a pattern that's showing for the last couple of years, the alcohol abuse that affects our road users' responsibilities. And we will be clamping down on the drunken driving motorists as well on our routes. From a chief director perspective, what are we changing or what are we enhancing for Easter? And I think this is part of our revised methodologies. And I think going into any type of festive period or critical period, we always look at what we can change or what we can improve from a law enforcement perspective. So for this weekend in particular, for the Easter weekend, besides our Exodus operations, fatigue management operations, and interprovincial operations, we've limited the amount of other static operations so that we can add and increase visibility on our routes. It's been quite a lot of good publicity and good comments that we got over the December period, that the routes were visible in terms of our traffic officers. So it makes the motorists feel a lot safer in terms of traveling, whether it's day or night. So we want to rather focus on having more visibility and reduce the amount of operations, but not water it down in any way, because at these operations, we'll be focusing on our focus areas as covered in my presentation. We are looking at the continuous improved and analytical usage of data and technology systems. And that is something that we thrive in terms of how we operate. And then what we've done for Easter is that we've looked at predictive analysis for the last 3 years in terms of, looking at historical plotting of where accidents and fatalities have occurred on our road network. And that will influence our deployments from Thursday up until next week, Tuesday, or the next Tuesday. Chair, we also looked at monitoring and evaluation of the progress of our achievements. And this is actually very important. Our teams get out there. We rely on their wellness to be optimal. We also rely on their motivation levels to be at the optimal to be able to execute from a tactical perspective the expectations in terms of the planning that has been done. And we found that, over the December period, there was daily statistics that were shared with our operational teams, so that they could also closely watch the fatality comparison to last year. So that also gave them that, that edge in terms of, I've got something to work towards and I've got to do my bit in terms of that. If I'm booked on duty for the day, I need to fulfill my part. So that's the goal setting that we've done for our operational teams. We also, try and do this religiously as well, the staggered deployment. And the overlapping from one corridor into the other, which also enhances visibility. We also commenced last year with our habitual traffic transgressor program, and that's still very much continuing. And we're hoping that the communication and the strategy around that would have really made motorists realize that they need to change their habits on our roads, because we've got data now that will show if you are badly behaved on our roads. So we're hoping to, through that campaign as well, see an improvement in road user behavior with the habitual traffic transgressor program. Also, from a communications point of view, we will be having mobile roadside billboards that we saw over December was quite effective at the start of the major routes, the N1, the N2, the N7. So that will continue over the Easter period. And then our colleagues from Safely Home will be covering all integrated operations so that it regularly gets posted on the social media pages so that, motorists can also see that, that teams are busy, but also, pick up some road safety tips along the way in terms of that posting. And Chair, that is my presentation on Easter 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chetty. Advocate Reinicke, is there anything that you'd possibly like to add?
No, Chair. I think Mrs. Chetty covered everything. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I'm going to open up to the meeting to our members if they wish to pose any questions or comments, questions for clarity or comments you'd like to make. I will recognize Honorable van der Westhuizen, Honorable Wimby, and I will take those two hands first in that order. Honorable van der Westhuizen, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officials for preparing this presentation. Just a question from my side. As a fellow road user, my impression is that quite often, accidents are caused by unsafe overtaking maneuvers, which is often the result of slower drivers not maintaining safe following distances. And I'm particularly concerned about this practice of heavy vehicles sometimes forming long trains where they do not leave any safe spaces open between these vehicles, resulting in faster vehicles that would like to overtake having to overtake a whole train or numerous vehicles in one move. Is that observation of mine, is it a valid one? Is it something that we can do something about? And then also, Chair, linked to this, quite often we've seen that our road authorities have now opened up areas for overtaking, particularly, at inclines. But then you find that one of these slow-moving vehicles wants to overtake another slow vehicle, taking up the full length of that, can I call it bypass, to try and overtake another vehicle, because there's not a marked difference in the speed or the power of the second vehicle. And then obviously a number of motorists are frustrated because whereas 8 or 10 vehicles would have been able to overtake, quite often they are prevented from doing so. So to what extent can this be addressed? Is it a real problem? And thirdly, to what extent do we have, can I call it ghost vehicles equipped with cameras that can, for example, garner evidence of people overtaking at unsafe places like on solid lines, etc.? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable Mvimbi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And also thank you very much to the team for such a very comprehensive presentation. And there is no doubt in my mind that then we are therefore more than prepared for this Easter weekend. Our team is ready. In fact, I think I was not going to have any question until almost at the tail end when the presenter mentioned something to do with safely home. Now, therefore, my question is just really general in nature, not specific, because I take this is our Arrive Alive campaign plan for the Easter weekend. That's what we will call it, Arrive Alive, the way it was presented. But then I got, because I've always been battling with the situation, with the question in my mind as to, we are subscribing to the campaign of Arrive Alive, which is, we all know, it's a national campaign. But when it comes to the Western Cape, there's always this thing called Safely Home, which the presenter right at the end did mention something to do that the Safely Plan group will also meet them somewhere, somehow. So I just wanted to check whether then as to whether is there really some parallel or is there a difference between our Arrive Alive plan or campaign, and there is also on the other hand something called Safely Plan. I know in one of our meetings we did say that we would like to have a full presentation around the Safely Home project or program or campaign. But then I just wanted to check whether, based on what the presenter just presented, is there a difference between Arrive Alive and Safely Home plan? That's really a general question I would like to ask. Other than that, Chairperson, I really don't have any question so far as the presentation is concerned. Very well prepared, very comprehensive. I've got no doubt, as I've said in my mind, we are more than prepared for this Easter weekend. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Mvimbi. Any other members like to pose a question for clarity? If not, I'm going to hand over back to Advocate Reinicke, and you will direct the responses to those questions. Thank you.
I will, Chair. I will tackle the second question on the Safely Home, and then I'll ask Mrs. Chetty to answer the questions of Member van der Westhuizen. But Member Mvimbi, the short answer is that initially, the Arrive Alive campaign was a national campaign that everybody sort of participated in. But the problem is that the Arrive Alive brand was owned by a private company. And there was a legal debate between the national department, as I remember correctly, and the private person about the who owns that brand. It was during that time and during that sort of debate that the Western Cape sort of decided to develop its own brand called the Safely Home brand. We didn't go it on our own. We worked very closely together with the Arrive Alive brand, making sure that our actions and their actions are coordinated and it works together to sell a single message. So the thing is that brand then grew within the Western Cape. So much so that today the Safely Home brand is such a recognizable brand that it would be a shame to get rid of something that that has an impact, a positive impact on road safety. But what we are doing, and we are working very, very closely with Arrive Alive, so they tweet our stuff out, we tweet their stuff out, and we make sure that we work together to further the objectives of road safety. I hope that sort of assists with some of the history and how the Safely Home brand started. I can then ask Mrs. Chetty to answer the questions of Member van der Westhuizen, if that suits you, Member Mbambi.
In order, Advocate Reiniger, we can proceed. Anum Mbambi, you wanted to respond?
No, I'm saying thank you very much. I'm clear, Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson.
Well, anyway, you're welcome. Thank you. Ms. Chetty, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the two members for the questions raised. Thank you, Member Mvumbi, for your compliment and as well as your confidence in the team that we are ready. And yes, we are rightfully ready. We actually are all systems go as of Thursday. Thank you very much for that. If I can also just add to the HOD's point on the Safely Home, and just to link it from an operational space as well, we sit on the National Forum, LETCOM, as well as the NRSSC forums. So the Safely Home program is linked in terms of the 365, the National 365 calendar that the RTMC sets aside every year in terms of what are the focus areas and how they align it. So it's not, the Safely Homes campaign is not aligned separately. It's well linked to the national strategy as well. If I can just add that to the second question, and then to Member van der Westhuizen's observation on the heavy motor vehicle convoy, and that's the reason why I included it as one of our challenges. It remains one of our challenges because we tend to find the heavy motor vehicles, and it's a valid observation and a valid risk that we've also identified in terms of how do we find ways to manage it, because you do get them traveling in a convoy, which then places other motorists, they become impatient and then they do the unnecessary things or the risky things of overtaking without properly checking whether it's safe to do so. And that's the reason, Member van der Westhuizen, that we encourage that our teams, that the resources are deployed en route so that they're not necessarily committed to static operations that will limit the amount of movement of the officers en route. And this is something, that will form part of that strategy for the deployment, that they need to break up those convoys. And it's well within the powers and duties of the officers that they can actually intersect on that convoy and try and split them up so that they do not travel in convoy. So thank you for that. We have included that in terms of our deployment and planning. And in terms of your other added onto that question in terms of the the overtaking that happens on the inclines, and that's also something that we see quite often. And you also need to consider the weather that also plays a factor in terms of that. If you're driving on the N1 towards Beaufort West, the sun is in your eye, at respective parts of the morning. So it does play a factor in terms of reckless and negligent driving. And therefore, moving violations is one of the major focus areas that the teams, there's a specific team that's deployed to look out for that reckless and negligent behavior. And if we see the erratic overtaking that's happening, then the driver normally gets locked up for reckless and negligent driving. So thank you for that observation that you pointed out, and very much so it's valid, and we have definitely considered it in terms of our deployment strategy. Thanks, Chairperson.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Chetty. I am going to ask members if they have any follow-up questions you'd like to ask, and they could ask them now. Honourable Mumbi, I see your hand is at the legacy hand.
Sorry, Chairperson, that's a previous hand. I'm going to remove it.
Okay, good. Honourable van der Westhuizen, I recognize you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much to Mrs. Chetty for the response. And I can just wish them everything of the best in breaking up those convoys, etc., and particularly in changing heavy vehicle driver behavior. I do know that, as we all are in a hurry, they are too. But I do believe that quite often they can be more considerate. May I just turn to the voluntary testing initiative, which is a great initiative. But Chair, I do recall that in the past there was a, can I almost say, a province-wide initiative whereby not only the provincial testing station, but also those of local governments were asked to join at times like this, or before Christmas season, etc. Have you approached our local governments to expand this initiative, perhaps? And if not, why not? If indeed, what is the response being? Perhaps we can go forward, make this an even bigger initiative with even more publicity, and hopefully even a greater participation from.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. I recognize Honourable
Seleku. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Honourable Seleku, and then Honourable Mvimbi again. Honourable Seleku, please proceed.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. And Chair, one would want to ask in terms of the people, or let me say the stakeholders. Remember, now it's good and well when one wants to achieve something, but we must always have this whole of society approach, because we can never be seen as if we are trying to do something great, but we are perceived as we are trying to limit people in terms of making money. And one would always know in terms of it's a busy time, and people would want to make a lot of money at the expense of losing lives, not with the intention, of course. But when one have to plan about these things going forward, one would want to know in terms of the involvement of all stakeholders that participate in terms of the moving of people from one area to the next. So in that sense, I would want to know in terms of, the launch, which was yesterday, has there been any involvement from the stakeholders, especially from the taxi associations, and what has been their take in terms of trying to have a reduction in terms of fatalities, and also trying to add on to what Honourable van der Westhuizen has been saying. What is the role, in terms of our local sphere of government when it comes to the planning of making sure that we have less and less fatalities on the roads? Because why I'm asking that is because for you to be on the N2 or the N1, you have to move out of a municipal area. jurisdiction. So if there is no processes within our municipal areas for people to make sure that people do not move out of the area to the N2, with potential of risking people's lives, then we are going somewhere. But if we are going to be missing, someone within the value chain, then we are going to make life difficult for us. So one would want to know, how is the interaction, within the different spheres of government in making sure that what we want to achieve as a province, everybody is buying into it and everybody is playing their part in trying to achieve what we want to achieve. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sileku. Honorable Mvimbi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just almost in line and in follow-up with what Honorable Andrikas has asked regarding the testing station. While I think I've got the relevant people in the meeting who might answer this question around the moratorium on testing station, I just want to find out whether there is, because there seems to be a rumor out there that there is a moratorium that has been put on testing station, especially in the area of West Coast. Just want to check whether from the official that are here, maybe is there something like that is in place, moratorium on testing station. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mvimbi. And I think I just want to ask a specific question. It is partly asked by Honorable Mvimbi, which raised it in particular. The engagement with the taxi industry, did they provide specific commitment to their role in assisting us in promoting road safety during these 2 weekends that the plan has been devised for? Because one accident on the N1 by a taxi coming from the Eastern Cape result often into multiple fatalities. And did they provide a commitment in terms of the explicit role that they will play in promoting road safety on the roads? Thank you, colleagues. Last round of questions, and this is the last responses we will get, and then we will wrap it up because we have 2 other presentations that we need to work through as well. Ms. Chetty, I am handing back to you, Minister. I recognize
just
you.
On that last point, before Ms. Chetty respond,
okay.
I actually earlier on this morning, I actually also saw. And I saw on TV yesterday, the chairperson of Santaco, where he specifically called on taxis to make use of our free testing opportunity. Obviously, one still have to see how many of them have come. So we hope that they heed the call of the leadership to come, test their vehicles, and ensure commuters get home safely and back from their Easter holidays. So I think from that perspective, just to respond to our colleague, that they didn't make a public call, but obviously it has to be from the people on the ground to adhere to the call and come and get their vehicles tested. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister. Advocate Reyneke, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just on the last point as well, I think that the Minister came up with a few initiatives with the taxi industry at the launch yesterday, and I don't know if Minister, if you want to inform of the initiative of potentially training, or if you want me to do so.
Mr. Reyneke, you can continue for the simple reason I've got the IT guy working on my laptop right here, and I don't want to be cut off.
All right,
The signal is horrible here. Yeah.
Okay, so the Minister came up with an idea yesterday together with the taxi industry, one where we will look at training people within the industry at our Gene Traffic College to look for, to inspect vehicles and to be able to roll out the initiative at the PTIs, particularly at the long distance PTIs like Joe Gaba, etc., and so forth. So that initiative it's very much in its infant stage. It was Minister's idea yesterday, and we're going to flesh it out, and we're going to work together with the taxi industry to see how we can implement that going forward. And then I will pass over to Mrs. Chetty to answer the other questions. But on the question of the moratorium at the testing stations, I'll ask Mr. Ahmed to come in there. So Ms. Chetty, to you, and then after that to Mr. Ahmed to answer the question on the testing stations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, HOD. If I can just respond to the question or the inquiry regarding the involvement of other local municipalities as well as the private vehicle testing stations in terms of latching onto the voluntary testing campaigns, it's very much correct in the sense that I'm aware that City of Cape Town last year sometime also embarked on a campaign like this. It's a little bit more difficult for the private vehicle testing centers, because theirs is purely based a lot on revenue that comes in for their test that's been done, and it's not regulated in the sense that, their fees are not regulated. So they charge a fee for the testing, which will mean, if they're going to do voluntary testing, then it's a loss of revenue. But I can assure you that, within the City of Cape Town, I'm well aware that they also very often embark on the voluntary testing, but they also assist us at the taxi ranks and the bus terminals in terms of where the long distance commute actually originates from. They often assist our road users there as well in terms of doing just a quick 10-point check to make sure that they are fit enough to actually take the long road. Coming back to Member Seleko's question regarding, how do we involve our other role players in terms of, if I can take the Easter planning as an example, and it's, very much correct in saying that, from a provincial side, we strive to actually encourage the multidiscipline approach in terms of planning and coordination. So what happens is that, when we do embark on the quarterly planning, We've got 13 centers across the province, and each traffic center then would take the tactical approach and have discussions within their local municipalities as well as SAPs, but also not just limited to those two role players. There's often customs, home affairs, immigration. We've got FPS as our partner. We've got EMS as our partners. So it becomes a collaborated plan in terms of the discussions that happens, before a period like this takes place. So we're quite comfortable in terms of those discussions and planning that has happened within each district, and that I can assure you that it's whatever we're executing for Easter is in the form of integration. And you rightfully said so. We need to encourage the whole of society approach, and it's something that we're very cognitive of in terms of the planning. We've got to get the buy-in, we've got to get the assistance from all our role players, because when you're at a location, instead of deploying 10 traffic officers, you can, maybe split it into 5 and rather have your other role players make up the other resources. And that joint planning, coordination and deployment, many hands make the work lighter, is the approach that we always take in terms of planning. So they are not left at the wayside in terms of, they're not understanding what the strategic intent is in terms of the reduction of fatalities or the reduction of road crashes in the province. I trust that answers the questions. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chetty. Colleagues, I'm going to let Mr. Ahmed just respond to the last question, and then we will wrap it up. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. Chair, I can assure Member Mvimbi there is no moratorium on vehicle testing. I heard him mention specifically the West Coast. if there is information that he has available that speaks about the moratorium, please, he's welcome to make contact with me directly so that we can look into it. But I think there may be some confusion on the part of maybe some members of industry or members of the public on the West Coast. We are aware that the Vredendal, I think it is Vredendal Municipal Vehicle Testing Station, is in the process of being privatized. They did call for, they went out on a public process to privatize that vehicle testing station. That process is still underway, so it may be that the Vredendal area is affected through that process, but there certainly isn't a blanket moratorium or any moratorium for that matter with regards to vehicle testing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Honourable Member, is there, if there's a specific matter that you would like to raise, I would suggest that we do that via a written question that you can submit to our procedural officer, Mr. Kutsia, and then we can forward it to the department for a response. So, colleagues, if you have any other questions that you'd like to pose, or concerns that you may have that has not been addressed, please, when we deal with resolutions later, you can raise that and we can submit it to the department for a particular response. So, we get back. The purpose of this briefing was basically just to appraise the committee on what preparations have been made to deal with the increased volume of traffic on our road this upcoming weekend and at the weekend of the end of the month. And so that when we do, meet again after these two particular sort of significant weekends in our calendar year, and then we can measure the successes of the efforts that have been sort of expended in terms of reducing road fatalities and keeping our people safe against the plan that was developed by the department. So to that end, I'd like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude towards the department, and congratulations, Advocate Reinicke, on your new responsibility as the leader of the department. We know that it's going to be an extremely busy time for you. You're always busy, but it's going to be a little bit more busier than other times. We hope and pray that we reduce the fatalities on our roads as much as humanly possible, and we encourage all the road users and pedestrians to contribute towards achieving the goals that you have set out for your department and for our province as a whole. So with that said, Advocate Reinicke, I have hand back to you if you have a few last words that you'd like to part with.
No, thank you, Chair. As for that word of I don't know if it's a word of caution, but the word of thanks for the little bit of caution. Thank you, sir. And nothing further. I see our minister's hand is up.
Okay, thank you so much, Advocate Reinicke. Minister, in closing, parting words that you'd like to share with the committee?
Thank you, Chairperson. And, with the Easter weekend coming up, there's a lot happening on our province. I think it's the first Easter weekend post-closed COVID that people are visiting their families, and what we can only ask people is to please be safe on the roads, look after yourself. It goes without saying that don't drink and drive. And I want to thank our traffic officials who try their best on the roads, because when people are pulled over, they can imagine people are not happy with being pulled over, but it's the right thing to do, because that's what traffic officers are there for, to ensure people are safe on the road. And so thank you to them, Ms. Chetty and your team, and also HOD Reineke. Today is, as you said, is the first, technically speaking, although they've been working from the first, our mobility departments starts in April. And I'm privileged chairperson. I've got a great team, Yashir, Ricardo, Advocate Reineke, Ms. Chetty, and anybody else that is either logged in late or watching. Thank you for taking us forward, but that's how we're going to fix mobility in the province. And this morning we had a lovely train ride with our national minister, and our trains are coming back slowly, chairperson, but it's a good thing that they are coming back at least. And yeah, we're looking forward to presenting to the Standing Committee on any of our future plans. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you to your team. All the best for the challenges that lie ahead. With that, the department officials that wish to exit the meeting, you may do so. I'm going to just give a 5-minute transition so that the national department could ready themselves for the presentation on the 2 bills that we're going to deal with. And we'll reconvene at 4:15. The meeting is adjourned. No, 2:15. Sorry, colleagues, I'm ahead of time. So a 5-minute break just for the exit and transition that will be effected, and then we will start with the second part of our meeting. Thank you so much. Colleagues, welcome back. It's now 2:15. We will commence with the other important part of our agenda, and that is the presentation by the National Department of Transport on the two bills that I mentioned earlier, and that being the Transport on the National Road Traffic Amendment Bill, as well as the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. So with us, we have, as I've indicated earlier, we have officials from the National Department of Transport. We have legal advisors from the Department of the Premier, as well as those from the Provincial Parliament, and we also have officers from the Public Education and Outreach Department. So without much further ado, and then also we also have our esteemed colleagues of SALGA, who's also present on the platform, and then we will, if they wish to, provide us with some sort of comments at the end of the presentations, I would invite them to do so. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Advocate Hatu from the Department of Transport. He will then direct the process that we will follow, and who's going to do the presentations and who's going to flight it, and then we will take it from there. Advocate Makatu, on behalf of the Western Cape Standing Committee on Mobility, thank you for availing yourself and your team to our meeting, and we are very appreciative that you have taken the time to share the presentation with us and to share the content with us and give us more sort of clarity in terms of what will assist us in processing this two pieces of legislation. But before I hand over to you, I recognize Honourable Sean August, who joined us earlier, that was not recognized early in the meeting. Welcome, Honourable August. And then Honourable Hatu, I hand over to you, and then you will direct and introduce your team, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. With your permission, Chairperson, may I not open up the camera for purposes of saving bandwidth and stability of the presentation that one will be making in this regard, Chairperson.
No problem.
Thank you for the indulgence, Chairperson, and may I humbly ask that you call me by my name, Johannes, Chairperson. It will be a great honor for me. That being said, Chairperson, I am with colleagues of mine from within the roads branch. I see Mr. John Motsatsing, and whereas from the public transport branch, they'll be presenting the National Land Transport Bill or the amendments there. It would be Mr. Moeketsi Sikudo, and I take it, I think also Mr. Simelani, Moses Simelani, if I happen not to see them, Chairperson, they will introduce themselves at a later stage. And I think in our midst, we also might be having the DDG ITP, Ms. Mashava. That being the case, Chairperson, I also want to tender an apology on behalf of the DDG Roads, Mr. Tlavisa. Having dispensed with those formalities, Chairperson, may I humbly request that the presentation be flighted from the secretariat or the office of the secretariat within the portfolio committee. If not, Chairperson, I can try to do that from my end. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. We will do that. Johan, are you going to fly the presentation?
I can flight it. Which one are we doing first, Jay? The road traffic?
Johannes, which one are we doing first?
The road traffic amendment, Chairperson.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, got that, Johan. Thank you.
There we go, Chairperson. Is it visible?
Okay, Chairperson, yes, it is. Yes. Mr. Kutse, you can move to the next slide. Chairperson, the presentation is made up of, let me say, 22 slides, to the extent that it's broken down into the following: the background, the objects of the bill, the National Road Traffic Amendment Bill, the clause-by-clause explanation, the consultation process, parliamentary procedures, and the recommendation, Chairperson. That being said, in the next slide, next slide. In summary, Chairperson, the bill was passed by the National Assembly, and it seeks to give effect to some of the principal strategies contained in the National Road Safety Strategy, hereinafter referred to as the Road Safety Strategy. Amongst others, it contains the Millennium Development Goals set out by the Ministers of Transport in Africa for purposes of reducing road crashes, improving traffic law enforcement, improving on existing mechanisms, and creating more measures to ensure road safety. The bill seeks to achieve proper implementation of the strategic interventions highlighted in the road safety strategy and to address practical challenges. Next slide, Mr. Kutsi. Now, as objects of the bill Chairperson seeks to provide for the registration and it seeks to provide for the registration and licensing of motor vehicles, manufacturers, builders, bodybuilders, importers, and manufacturers of number plates. It seeks to empower members of Executive Council, for short MECs, to register an applicant as a manufacturer, bodybuilder, builder, importer, and manufacturer of number plates. It seeks to regulate the registration and grading of applicants as driving school instructors and direct how the application and registration of driving school instructors should be made. It seeks further to regulate the driving school industry and to prohibit the operation of unregistered and ungraded driving schools and utilization of ungraded driving school instructors. Chairperson, this is a first that we're doing in because the bill is a first insofar as the regulation of driving school is concerned. Next slide, Mr. Kutsi. It seeks to ensure misconduct and criminal processes are more efficient, effective, properly enforced, and implemented. It also seeks to empower MECs to declare as void all documents purporting to be driving licenses. It seeks to empower the minister to appoint a personal authority as an inspectorate of driving license testing centers. And it seeks to ensure compulsory registration and grading of driving schools and the suspension and cancellation of registration by respective MECs. Next slide. Chairperson, we now deal with the clause-by-clause discussion of the proposed amendments in the bill, and they go as follows. Clause 1 amends existing definitions, and it sets new definitions in order to assist in the interpretation of the Act, whereas Clause 2 and 3 amend Section 3A, capital A, Section 3, capital A, and Section 3, capital B of the Act, respectively, to include NATIS officers, reserve traffic wardens, and traffic wardens to be appointed and registered by the Chief Executive Officer. May I hastily point that the CEO here, Chairperson, would refer to the CEO of the Road Traffic Management Corporation Act, of the Road Traffic Management Corporation as established in terms of the RTMC Act for short. Clause 4 amends Section 3 capital C of the Act by providing that no person shall be registered or remain registered as an examiner of vehicles, traffic officer, reserve traffic warden, and notice officer if such a person or his or her spouse has or acquires a direct or an indirect financial interest in the manufacturing, selling, rebuilding, repairing, or modifying of vehicles. Clause 5, Chairperson amends Section 3 capital D of the Act to provide for the minimum requirements and qualifications instead of a diploma for registration as an inspector of licenses, examiner of vehicles, examiner for driving licenses, or traffic officer. A traffic warden, a road traffic warden, and notice officers are included as well. Next slide. Clause 6, Chairperson amends Section 3 capital E of the Act by providing for the suspension or cancellation of registration of an examiner for driving licenses or an examiner of vehicles if such a person was convicted for a crime as contemplated in Schedules 1 and 2 to the Criminal Procedure Act, or, Chairperson, if such a person has direct or indirect financial interest in the transport service business or motor vehicle business. Clause 7, Chairperson, amends Section 3I, which 3 capital I, which provides for the powers and duties of a traffic officer. It seeks further to add a new paragraph in Section 3 capital I, which provides a further power of a traffic officer to impound a motor vehicle if the traffic officer is satisfied on reasonable grounds and subject to verification by the said traffic officer that the motor vehicle was issued with a notice to discontinue operations in terms of Section 44 of the Act and the notice was not complied with. Or the vehicle is being operated on a public road by a driver who is not a holder of a valid driving license, or is being operated on a public road by a driver who is not a holder of a valid professional driving permit. Clause 8, Chairperson, substitutes Section 3 capital L of the Act to preclude a Department of State or an authority from offering authorized officer qualifications unless such Department of State or authority has been approved, registered, and graded as a training center in accordance with the prescribed requirements. Clause 9, Chairperson, inserts a new sections 3 capital M, 3N, and O to provide for the application for and the registration and grading of a training center by the Shareholders Committee, and also provides for the suspension and cancellation of registration of a training center by the Shareholders Committee. The Shareholders Committee here, Chairperson, refers to the Shareholders Committee as established in terms of the RTMC Act, which is chaired by the Honorable Minister and MECs of respective provinces who sit as members thereto. Next slide. Clause 10, Chairperson, amends Section 5 of the Act and provides that manufacturers, builders, bodybuilders, and importers must apply for registration to the CEO and that they shall not manufacture, build, modify, import, sell, or distribute motor vehicles unless registered in the prescribed manner by the CEO. Clause 11, Chairperson, seeks to insert Sections 5 capital A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L in the Act. This clause provides for the manufacturing of blank number plates, supplying of blank number plates, manufacturing of reflective sheeting for number plates, supplying of reflective sheeting for number plates, and embossing of number plates. Clause further prohibits the manufacturing of blank number plates, supplying of blank number plates, manufacturing of reflective sheeting for number plates, supplying of reflective sheeting for number plates, and embossing of number plates unless the person, authority, or organization is registered. A person, authority, or organization chairperson may apply to the MEC for registration as a manufacturer of blank number plates, supplier of blank number plates, manufacturer of reflective sheeting for number plates, supplier of reflective sheeting for number plates, and embosser of number plates. The MEC may, subject to due process of law, suspend or cancel the registration if the person is no longer complying with the prescribed requirements. Clause 11 further, chairperson provides for weighbridge facilities. This clause, chairperson seeks to prohibit anyone from operating a weighbridge facility unless such person is registered. A person, authority, or organization desiring to operate a weighbridge facility may apply to the MEC for registration, and such registration may, subject to due process of the law, be suspended or cancelled by the MEC if such person, authority, or organization no longer complies with the prescribed requirements. Clause 11 further, chairperson, provides for the manufacturing and supply of microdots as well as microdot fitment centers. No person may manufacture or supply microdots or operate a microdot fitment center unless such person is registered. A person or authority or organization may apply to the MEC for registration, who may, subject to due process of the law, suspend or cancel such registration of such person, authority, or organization if they no longer comply with the prescribed requirements. Next slide, Mr. Gutsi. Chairperson, Clause 12 amends Section 6 of the Act, which provides for appeals to the Shareholders Committee in the event that a person is aggrieved at a refusal by the CEO to register him or her as a manufacturer, or if a person is aggrieved by a suspension or cancellation of a registration. The new proposal seeks to extend the right of appeal to a manufacturer of blank number plates, manufacturer of reflective sheeting for number plates, the supplier of blank number plates, supplier of reflective sheeting for number plates, embossers of number, embossers of number plates, weighbridge facility, manufacturer of microdots, supplier of microdots, and microdot fitment center. Clause 13 amends Section 17 of the Act, chairperson, by providing for the Inspectorate of Manufacturers, Bodybuilders, Importers, Number Plates, Microdots, and Weighbridge facilities, whose powers and duties are to be prescribed in the regulations. Clause 14 repeals Section 8 of the Principal Act. Whereas Clause 15, chairperson, amends Section 8, capital A of the Act by providing that a driving license testing center may apply for registration for operation of a mobile facility for purposes of testing applicants for learners licenses. This is just a extension of services, chairperson, where recognition is now given to mobile facilities that would be attached to a particular DLTC using their infrastructure so that services can be rendered to members of the public. Next slide. Clause 16 amends Section 9 of the Act to include grading of driving license testing centers in the Gazette, in addition to notice of registration. Clause 17, chairperson, amends Section 11 of the Act to remove the involvement of the Shareholders Committee in the appointment of an Inspectorate of Driving License Testing Centers. Clause 18 inserts new Section 11, capital A of the Act to provide for the appointment of and the powers and duties of provincial inspectorates whose powers and duties must be prescribed by the Minister of Transport in consultation with the relevant MEC. Next slide. Clause 19, Chairperson, amends Section 15 of the Act, which provides for the disqualification from obtaining or holding a learner's license or a driving license. This clause further seeks to include driving permit in the disqualification. The clause further provides that the CEO may attach conditions in respect of an issued license by a person who has to drive with the aid of glasses, an artificial limb, or any other aid. Clause 20, Chairperson, amends Section 16 of the Act by providing that any person who is the holder of a license authorizing the driving of a motor vehicle, who becomes aware that he or she is disqualified from holding such a license, must submit the license to the CEO, who must cancel the license. And if the license was issued in a prescribed territory, the CEO must notify those authorities of the cancellation. Next slide. Clause 21, Chairperson, amends Section 17 of the Act by providing that a person shall not willfully or negligently issue a learner's license or authorize the issue of a learner's license, endorse or fail to endorse a learner's license, or produce, print, or manufacture any document similar to a learner's license, contrary to the provisions of Chapter 4 of the Act. This clause further provides that an applicant for a learner's license who makes use of any unauthorized aid during a test for a learner's license or is found in possession of an aid that may assist a person in answering a test for a learner's license shall be disqualified from reapplying for a learner's license for a period not exceeding 24 months from the date of such disqualification. The Minister is empowered to make regulations regarding due processes that will be followed before a person is disqualified. Clause 22, Chairperson, adds a new subsection 5, capital A, in Section 18 of the Act and prohibits the use of unauthorized aid during a driving license test, and a guilty person will be disqualified from reapplying for a license for a period of 2 years. Next slide. Clause 23, Chairperson, amends Section 19 of the Act by providing that the examiner of driving license shall, on receipt of an application for substitution of a driving license, if he or she is satisfied that the existing license is a valid license and that the applicant is the holder thereof, issue or authorize the issue of a driving license in respect of the class of motor vehicle to which the existing license relates. Furthermore, any person whose license, Chairperson, has become invalid in terms of Section 18 sub 6 or 7 of the Act and who requires a driving license must apply anew for the issue of such driving license. Clause 24, Chairperson, amends Section 20 of the Act by providing that a driving license issued in terms of subsection 1 shall be deemed to be a driving license issued under this Act until a date fixed by Minister by notice in the Gazette. Clause 25 substitutes Section 23 of the Act and provides for circumstances under which a driving license authorizing the driving of a motor vehicle which was issued in any other country that is a contracting state to the Convention, and an international driving permit which was issued while the holder thereof was not permanently or ordinarily resident in the Republic, shall be deemed to be a driving license or a driving permit. Next slide. Clause 26 amends Section 25 of the Act, Chairperson, by providing that if the holder of a learner's license or a driving license issued in terms of Chapter 4 of the Act, a repealed ordinance, or any prior law is disqualified from holding such license, The CEO must cancel such license if the holder of the license constitute a source of danger to the public by driving a motor vehicle on a public road, and an affirmation or an affidavit in respect of the circumstances relating to such source of danger is submitted to the CEO. Then the CEO may cancel or suspend such license. Clause 27 amends Section 27 of the Act in order to clarify that an amendment is made in terms of Section 18 sub 4B of the Act. Clause 28 chairperson amends Section 28 of the Act to include grading in respect of registration of an instructor. Clause 29 amends Section 28 capital A of the Act to provide that any person desiring to be registered as an instructor apply at a driving license testing center to the CEO in respect of one or more classes of motor vehicles for which a learner's or a driving license can be obtained and in terms of the prescribed conditions. Next slide. Clause 30 amends Section 28 capital B of the Act, which provides for the requirements for eligibility for registration of a person as an instructor. Clause 30 further adds a new requirement that a person may not be registered as an instructor if he or she has been convicted of any offense listed in Schedules 1 or 2 to the Criminal Procedure Act, or if such a person has been convicted of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Clause 31 inserts sections 28, capital D, E, F, G, and H to provide for the compulsory registration and grading of driving schools and for suspension and cancellation of registration by the MEC. Clause 32, chairperson amends Section 29 of the Act by providing that a document purporting to be a learner's or a driver's license issued contrary to Chapter 4 of the Act shall, on the request of the Inspectorate of Driving License Testing Centers or Provincial Inspectorate, be declared void by the CEO. Upon his or her request, the holder of such a document shall forthwith submit such document to the Inspectorate of Driving License Testing Centers, who shall destroy the document in the prescribed manner. Further, providing that the CEO may, under the prescribed circumstances, condone the issue of a document referred to in subsection 1 and declare such a document to be a valid license from the date of issue of the document. Next slide. Chairperson, Clause 33 amends Section 30 of the Act by providing that no person shall use any other person's learner's or driving license and present such license as his or her own. Clause 34 amends Section 31 of the Act by providing that no person who is the owner or operator or is in charge or control of a motor vehicle shall apply or permit any other person to drive that motor vehicle on a public road unless that other person is licensed to drive the motor vehicle. He or she must verify that such person is licensed before such a person drives the such motor vehicle. Clause 35 amends Section 32 of the Act by providing that any person, by prohibiting any person from driving a motor vehicle of a prescribed class on a public road except in accordance with the conditions of a professional driving permit issued to him or her, and unless such person keeps such permit with him or her in the vehicle. Furthermore, if the person accompanying the holder of a learner's license is an examiner for a driving license, such examiner does not have to be the holder of a professional driving permit. Clause 36 effects technical amendments, Chairperson. Next slide. Clause 37, Chairperson amends Section 34 of the Act by adding a new subsection to provide that where a court has issued an order declaring a convicted person who is not the holder of a license or permit to be disqualified from obtaining a license, The registrar or clerk of the court shall notify the MEC concerned of such order, and the MEC shall record such order in the register for driving licenses. Clause 38, Chairperson inserts section 53 capital A in the bill and provides for the power of an MEC to delegate his or her statutory powers to another person, although this does not prevent the MEC chairperson from exercising such power himself or herself. Clause 39, Chairperson amends Section 57 of the Act to include Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, for short PRASA, in the authority to display road traffic signs or to remove road traffic signs in a railway level crossing over any public road. As it is, Chairperson, we've now, other than the Act providing for transit now, there is an addition that has been made there to include PRASA, Chairperson. Clause 40 amends Section 58 of the Act, which provides for the authority to disregard road traffic signs, to include a person who drives an emergency vehicle in the carrying out of his or her duties, or a person driving a vehicle while responding to a disaster in terms of the Disaster Management Act, permitting such person to disregard the directions of a road traffic sign, which is displayed in the prescribed manner, and in the case where such vehicle is approaching certain intersections, such driver to stop at the intersection and proceed only when it is safe to do so. Next slide. Clause 41, Chairperson amends Section 60 of the Act to provide that the driver of an emergency vehicle who drives such vehicle in the carrying out of his or her duties, or a person driving a vehicle which is responding to a disaster in terms of the Disaster Management Act, may not exceed a speed of 20 kilometers per hour through an intersection. Clause 42, Chairperson inserts a new Section 62 capital A in the Act and provides that in the event of a road incident, the emergency services shall immediately respond to the incident and render all the necessary services as prescribed. Clause 43, Chairperson amends Section 76 of the Act by including the Economic Commission of Europe regulations or model regulations in the provision for the incorporation of standards by reference. This is just recognition, Chairperson, that South Africa, as a signatory to the United Nations ECE conventions, that vehicles which by nature you would find that in Africa they do not have sufficient safety features. Now, as signatories, we are simply saying to manufacturers that there should be that likeness, Chairperson, that there be no difference between a motor vehicle which is manufactured in Europe, that it be different from one in Africa, Chairperson. It's something to that effect, Chairperson. Whereas Clause 44 amends Section 80 of the Act by providing that any disabled person Chairperson, any disabled person who has been exempted from the laws relating to parking in accordance with the prescribed requirements, and to whom proof of such exemption has been issued, Chairperson, must be deemed to be so exempted from the laws applicable in the area of jurisdiction of all local authorities in the Republic. Chairperson, what used to happen in the past is that a disabled person's permit would be valid within the jurisdiction or area or province within which they reside. And now recognition has been given to the fact that they need not, as and when they park in any other province or parking designated as such for disabled person, they need to do an application, Chairperson. So there is that mutual recognition of permits that is now been proposed by this amendment, Chairperson. Next slide. Chairperson, Clause 45 amends Section 81 of the Act by providing for circumstances under which a registered vehicle which does not comply with the provisions of the Act might be exempted and authorized to operate on a public road. 46, Chairperson amends Section 85 of the Act by providing that an application for the issue of a document as proof of a driving license must be made to the relevant MEC or minister, and such application shall be accompanied by the full names and identity of such applicant and appropriate fees, if any. Clause 47, Chairperson effects technical amendments in respect of references and the CEO. Clause 48 substitutes the heading of the section and the arrangement of the section, Chairperson, whereas 49 provides for the short title and commencement. Next slide, Mr. Kutsie. Chairperson, the next slide is a reflection of consultations that have been embarked upon since the conceptualization of this bill, Chairperson. We want to say here that provincial departments responsible for transport and traffic in the provinces and other stakeholders were consulted. Next slide, Chairperson, would be on the parliamentary procedures, and that is to say that the Office of the Chief State Law Advisor opined that this bill must be dealt with in accordance with the procedures set out in Section 76 of the Constitution, hence the engagements today. Chairperson, the recommendations there, it so happens that an incorrect presentation was shared, but what would be similar there would be that we request the Select Committee to know the proposed amendments to the National Road Traffic Amendment Bill and that they approve it for further processing, Chairperson, in terms of the provincial mandates. That's where we end our presentation, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johannes. That's quite a bit of information to digest. I'm going to just open up the meeting. We're going to just deal with this particular piece of legislation first, and then we'll move on to the next one. Colleagues, there you go. If there's much that we still need to do with regard to this piece of legislation, but if you have any questions for clarity you'd like to pose now, you're welcome to do so. I recognize Honourable van der Westhuizen. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have a question regarding people assisting others to obtain their driver's licenses. Up to now, it has often been a relatively easy way to get into entrepreneurship and have your own earn your own money by offering to assist other people to master the art of driving a vehicle. And my impression is that it has been a relatively informal process. Anybody can offer, and quite often I think we have parents assisting their children, we have family members assisting young people to master that art, to get the necessary exercise in this or to practice driving a vehicle, parking a vehicle. We all know what the skills are that are required. Now, my impression is that you want to formalize this by requiring of people rendering such a service to formally register. Then secondly, it seems to me that might be motivated by the fact that you would like to act against such people should they then, for example, commit fraud or act outside of the law. Now, my question is just, is that linked to an individual person or is it linked to the driving school? But my impression is that quite often people just start up a new enterprise, register a new entity in law, and then they continue with the same unlawful conduct that you wanted to eradicate in the first instance. Perhaps if you could just tell us what does the existing legislation or regulations in this regard prescribe? Because unfortunately, we are only looking at the amendments and not the main act, the one I believe passed in 1996. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. I also have just a question that is closely related to that particular question posed by Honourable van der Westhuizen, and that relates to Section 31, 28H, whereby the Minister appoint an inspectorate of driving schools. Now, the new Section 28H, subsection 3, it says that the Minister may, in order to defray expenditure incurred by or on behalf of that inspectorate for the purposes of performance of its functions, prescribe the fees to be paid in respect of inspections carried out in terms of this Act. Now, my question is, in terms of the appointment of the inspectorate, is that going to be a national inspectorate, or is it going to be cascaded provincially, where we will have a provincial inspectorate that will conduct inspections when needed? Or, and in terms of funding and how are the appointments to this sort of inspectorate going to be effected? If is it going to be sourced from the existing departments, or is it a new structure that is going to be created? Any other members would like to pose any other questions? Look like it, Johannes. Can you just respond to those two questions, please?
No problem, Chairperson. Sorry, I was speaking, yet I was. I remained muted. Chairperson, let me, in the sequence that they were asked, address Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable Member, you are correct insofar as we now seek to formalize this practice where I would teach my siblings how to drive, Chairperson. Remember, at the beginning we said that we are seeking to address road safety and issues of carriages that we have on our roads, and that whoever is going to henceforth be teaching a person to drive should be registered. Right? And in that way, we will be able to establish whether, having registered, this person now meets the requirements, and we conduct inspections from the different inspectorates that would be established. We have one within the national department, and the expectation is that this will be cascaded to provinces, because we seek, amongst others, to devolve powers that initially were with the minister, and now they are going to be accorded to MECs. Reference was made by Honourable van der Westhuizen to that there be a link to a person or a driving school when they contravene. The mere fact, Honourable Member, that now we would be having a database of all those persons that would be registered as driving schools. In the event of any contravention that they would have committed, they would be dealt with having followed due process in terms of the law as outlined in this proposed bill, Chairperson. And they might, one of the consequences of such non-compliance or failure would include suspension or cancellation or deregistration. So the expectation is that systems would be linked, and we would be looking at the National Traffic Information System, Chairperson, either being this being added as a module or and so forth. Now, coming to the inputs made by the chairperson, the comment from the chairperson was that the inspectorate, whether it will be national or provincially, again, chairperson, devolution of powers, and that we're looking at provincial inspectorates, and insofar as funding is concerned, it will be from sourced from within the existing departments, given the fact that this will be a new function that will be established, chairperson. And in an instance where provinces might not have made the necessary budget, we would look into what is termed institutional arrangements, where certain sections would be held in abeyance up until everything else is put in place, and then they are gazetted for purposes of coming into operation. Not certain whether my colleague, Mr. Mutsatsing, would want to add or amplify or correct what I've said, Chairperson. With your permission, Chairperson, obviously, Mr. Mutsatsing.
For sure.
No, good afternoon, Chairperson, honorable members. No, Advocate, I think we have adequately captured the questions that were raised. Yeah, there's nothing more that I would want to add for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. And yeah, that is it. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate. The one other question is that in terms of the submissions that you have received, did you receive any submission from the Mobility Department in the Western Cape?
Yes, we did, Chairperson. Albeit that they go under a different name. Yes, but we did. And may I hastily point out that there are committees that have been established, Chairperson, and they form part and parcel of the consultations that would have ensued when the bill was conceptualized. Other than that, when the portfolio committee of transport put it out for comment, they also made inputs there, Chairperson. So yes, the answer is in the affirmative.
Okay, thank you, Johannes. I'm not going to ask you whether they were incorporated in the bill as it is, because it is a process that...
Yes, they were, Chairperson.
Okay.
They were, because remember, Chairperson, sorry to budge in. Like I said, we have committees where they are representatives from the respective provinces, and some of what is appearing before honourable members has inputs that have been made by most of the provinces that we are currently consulting, Chairperson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think members, are there any other questions for clarity you'd like to pose before we move on to the next bill, because we're a bit pressed for time? It is now just after 3. I see a hand, and that is Member Nkondlu. I recognize you. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to latch on what you just asked, just to check from the colleagues. If you're gonna get to the point where you regulate and cause for registration of even individuals that would, I mean, myself trying to help my daughter to learn to drive, don't you think that is over-regulating? And what would that cost, putting up all that operational support from government and maybe from your business case? What are the kind of, what's the percentage of any road fatalities that actually come of such to justify such a regulation? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlu. Johannes, to respond to that?
No problem, Chairperson. Thanks, dear Honorable Nkondla. Okay, on the issue of over-regulating, we do not think so, because there is no conformity and standard in terms of how people are taught how to drive. So we deemed it prudent that if we were to have those that would want to teach next person how to drive, they need to be registered as there are certain rules or procedures that are out there, Chairperson, that ordinarily not everyone would follow. And for that reason, we would want to hold high standards upon which driving schools, including instructors, should be upheld, Chairperson, insofar as driving is concerned. And that we believe would assist in reducing fatalities on our roads. I mean, Chairperson, you would find in some instances that somebody drives post sunset, they've not switched on their lights, right? It could either be that they have forgotten or that they were not properly taught, Chairperson. It could be one of those things, Chairperson. And yeah, I think I've responded to what Honorable Gondlo posed, Chairperson, and I would want to leave it there. Not certain whether Mr. Mutsating, you would want to add anything on top of what I said. Thank you.
No, thanks, Advocate. Just to amplify that, if you look at the current dispensation with regards to a person being taught to drive, for instance, by their parents and all those, obviously the training in itself is done within, not on a public road, because if a traffic officer were to come across that particular instance where I teach my son how to drive, and that particular son is not a holder of a learner's license, obviously that would be a cause for a citation. But if you look at the dispensation in relations to instructors and all those, is that we want to have a situation whereby in that process of training, they do have the legal authority to be able to teach a person to drive and ensure that they are not cited for teaching a person how to drive. But in terms of how then are we going to operationalize instances whereby as an individual we would want to train our own children how to drive, I think in the process of unpacking the regulatory framework within the regulations, there will be an instances where you would then, the same as you take what past experience or what they call experiential training, and say in this instance, this is basically the process that you would have to undertake to verify that indeed that particular person is able to drive a motor vehicle and he understands all the rules and the rules of the road. So that's basically us trying to improve road safety, ensuring that we have skilled drivers on our road and reduce the number of fatalities. Because if you look at it from the stats, tells us that in most of the fatalities that we have on our roads, the bulk of some of the accidents, not necessarily all of them, but the bulk of some of the accidents that we have are from novice drivers, people that have just acquired their driving license. And obviously they, because of the power of the motor vehicles that they will drive. Obviously, they are not experienced to a certain extent to control that particular motor vehicle. So it's one of those things. Not necessarily to say being a novice driver you are not able to drive, but it's part and parcel of us improving the driving skills of drivers. I think that's my input, Advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mutachi. I am going to allow Honorable Nkondlu to raise a follow-up question, and then I recognize Advocate Leroux that is going to come after Honorable Nkondlu. And Honorable Nkondlu, you may proceed.
No, thanks, Chair. I think perhaps the last part that the colleague was, I think, adding would have even much more help, maybe if we are provided with, some of these base documents that colleagues as initiators of these amendments, they use to actually, and I'm assuming based on the research, justifies the kind and nature of responses in terms of legislation that you put up. Because indeed, for me, I'm still not understanding the extent or the correlation you make that novice drivers or those that are, let's say first-time drivers, the basis from which they may be reckless, it's only because they may have been trained outside of a very regulated, I'm assuming, because I went through a driving school. But my point here was whether you need to over-regulate right to individuals. And I'm asking, what is the percentage based on the research that you have done that you've got formalized training in South Africa of anybody who must hold a license? That is why we've got driving schools, and that's why you've got licensing, unless our problem is illegal licensing, which is also one of the challenges that we've seen. So that is why my caution or my issue about over-regulating and the cost from the state of putting up, if you consider all the 9 provinces who are going to be burdened, with all the red tape that must be put up now to try and get all of these individualized mother, sister, uncle, and all of that, whether that justifies that particular cost. So I'm just asking, Chair, that maybe colleagues can then share with us that a business case that would have triggered this nature, because sometimes we do not have context of some of the things that gets to be provided for as amendments, because they better understand this based on research and the years of maybe data that they deal with. So if they can provide that, I think, because we may not necessarily have the time now, it will be back and forth, for one to read and actually be able to really be convinced and have context of how, we get to this point. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nkondlu. I'm going to recognize Advocate Leroux. Advocate.
Chairperson, thank you. Sorry, my voice is a little groggy. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Chairperson, thank you, Chairperson. Just on Member Nkondlu's question, and this is my question, it's not a statement. Maybe the department can just help with that, because I'm reading on page 4 of the bill, the definition of instructor, and it refers to instructor means any person who for direct or indirect reward. So it seems to me, unless I misread it, as though this is only intended to apply to driving schools or instructors that provide that service for some sort of profit or for some sort of reward. So on my reading, that it seems as though that requirement is not intended to, as Member Nkondlu refers to mothers and fathers and brothers as helping siblings and children, etc., to learn to drive. If maybe I don't know if my reading of that is incorrect, the department can maybe just give some clarity on that. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Advocate Leroux. Johannes, wrap up.
Thanks, Chairperson. No, the interpretation or reading of the definition by Advocate Leroux is true and correct, Chairperson. The concern here is, Chairperson, is that one would teach from one person to another. There would be different methods or ways within which one would teach somebody to drive, Chairperson. Right? Here, the intent is that there should be certain standards. And if there's a need or a field that one would want to enter in this space, right, then there are certain minimum standards or requirements that would have to be put if you were to do that. So that being the case, Chairperson, and in amplification of the fact that we have instances where youths are the ones that are constitute most of the fatalities on our roads. It's just a measure that we're trying to come up with, Chairperson, in addressing crashes on our roads. It's as simple as that, Chairperson, and I would want to leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Advocate Nhatu. I think from our side, I think this is just the start of our process. We will have consultations. We will deliberate further on the bill and then develop our own mandate for our provincial delegates to take to the NCOP. So it is just a start, and I don't think it is. We have exhausted all the concerns that have been raised, and there are many more, but we will deal with those. I just want to say thank you to Advocate Nhatu and your team for putting this presentation together with regard to this particular bill. I think that it was very helpful for us, and we will further sort of deliberate on the various clauses that have been amended and develop our own particular position regarding that. And the concerns raised by our members will certainly be further explored when we deal with the bill and develop our position, so to speak. With that said, we have another bill that we need to deal with, and I'm going to hand back to you, Advocate Nhatu, to direct us as to how we're going to deal with the second one. I think Johan is going to flight that bill, and then you will then direct us as to how we're going to deal with it, or who from your office is going to deal with it. And then and that one is the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. So Johan, I'm going to you flighted it. Advocate Nhatu, back to you. You can take us from there.
Indeed, Chairperson. Thanks very much. May I humbly request that Ntate Kudo or Mr. Similani ascend the podium and take the select committee through the National Land Transport Amendment Bill, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair, and the honorable members and colleagues from the Western Cape Province. Yes, Chair, thank you for the opportunity again to give us this opportunity to present the National Land Transport Amendment Bill. Chairperson, thanks for Johan for flighting it up, so I'll be trying to just keep up with him or direct him once I'm done. Chair, it's very short, Chair. It's just the background, the President's reservations, and the Department's responses, and then conclusion. So, Chair, like maybe, Chair, you might have heard about this amendment of the National Land Transport Amendment Bill with your members. That it's a bill, Chair, that has been coming in the making for quite some time now. It's been quite daunting to walk it through from the department side, Chair. If you were there, Chair, or most of your members will remember, I think around 2016-17, we were dealing with the provincial legislatures walkabout with this bill, just presenting and then going through their districts to present to the communities of what they can expect from this bill, Chair. So hence it went all the way, Chair. Then around 2020, Chair, that's where this bill, 2020, around April, it reached the presidency. And then the presidency then looked at it. They just took quite some time in the presidency because it was their Chair from around that time, 2020 April. Then around 2021, towards the end of the year, that's where from the department side, we heard that then there were issues that the president had the reservations on the bill regarding the constitutionality of it. And also, Chair, it was just limited to clause 7. So then, Chair, this is what then is going to be presented here. We've been busy with the PCOT as it was introduced back to Parliament since last year, Chair. Then it was adopted as the department made some amends and then corrected the bill as the president has cautioned us on the constitutionality and on how the powers and functions in the 3 spheres of government gets allocated. So, Chair, just quickly, I won't be long, Chair. So mine is very short, Chair, because it's just clause 7. We're not dealing with the entirety of the bill, as has been advised also by the Parliament legal advisor that we need to confine ourselves with the matters that the president has raised, so that then the bill then can be processed through the 2 houses of Parliament, and then it can then go back to the president to be enacted into law. So just quickly, Chair, on the background is the Land Transport Act 5 of 2009, which is the principal act which was enacted to further the process of transforming and restructuring the national land transport transition, national land transport systems, as started by the Transition Act of 2000. So this bill, Chair, is designed to update the principal act and respond to changes since 2009. And you can imagine, Chair, since that time to now, a lot has changed into the public transport space. So by the time this bill is finalized, we will then maybe need to also run again to check our public transport environment and see what has changed. And again, maybe start all over again with maybe another round of an amendment. So the bill, Chair, is designed to update the Act of 2009. The bill also provides for the regulation of the electronic hailing services, Chair, that you might know, a very popular service in our public transport space, particularly in big cities. That service has been a nuisance to government in terms of trying to regulate it. However, Chair, it just came, unfortunately, in the public transport space only after the National Land Transport Act was enacted into law. So then it got into the amendments that started around 2011 going forward. So like you know, Chair, now the e-hailing services has flooded the market. There's been a lot of conflicts because it's not a service that is accepted by other operators. They treat it as an illegal. But through the guidance of Parliament, what the department was requested to do was to say, how do we cover the space in the interim whilst we're still running an amendment where we put a proper provision on the Land Transport Act? So then, Chair, we just made a practice note to say, since this service, it seemed to be close to a meter taxi type service, or a charter type service, maybe provincial regulatory entities can look into those services and try and regulate these services, because they're already flooding the market and they were grown so much popularity with the residents of South Africa because of its efficiency, whereby you upload an app on your phone, then you can hail a vehicle in your doorstep, somebody sick in the family, you quickly get a vehicle within a few minutes, then you take whoever for a service check. So next slide. So one objective of the Principal Act was to consolidate functions at the local sphere where possible to avoid fragmentation of functions. So that is what the 2009 Act did. The policy position of the legislature was that certain function that needs to be consolidated at a local authority level where we all get services, let it be done so in the spirit of the Constitution principle of subsidiarity. So the Principal Act thus gives powers only to municipalities to enter into new contracts in terms of the NLTA of 2009. And it only allows then provinces and national to continue with the all other contracts from the Transition Act until they are assigned to municipalities. So, however, Chair, then that which was envisaged by the legislature to say, look, when functions need to be consolidated at a local authority level, there were some challenges that probably was now on the ground. In that municipalities, certain municipalities, then they lack certain capacities and disagreement between them and the municipalities in terms of the contracting functions. Next slide. So therefore, Chair, then to deal with these challenges and possible lapses of services in certain areas, not everywhere, the bill then sought to amend then Section 11 of the Principal Act to allow provinces to conclude new contracts and at the same time to allow national government to intervene where provinces and municipalities fail to perform this duty. So thus, Chair, then when it went to the presidency, Chair, then the president then cautioned the department. We are just on the caution side, Chair, from the presidency to say, in terms of the constitutional functions, powers and functions that are allocated in the spheres of government, we need to be careful then how those are apportioned, because each sphere of government enjoys its independence or on its jurisdiction in terms of powers and functions. And more so, Chair, the Constitution, I think it gives a concurrent function for public transport in all three spheres. Then, Chair, then when we then, from the presidency side, then they then caution the constitutional provision in terms of clauses 7A, B, H, I, J, K, L, M of the bill, which, Chair, was based on the objections by SALGA and the City of Cape Town. Yes, so then that's where the contention was, Chair. Then that the presidency then cautioned the department to say, look, can you just re-look at those clauses and see if you'd be amenable or agree to amend them, or you provide some rationale. So then the department, Chair, is of the view that the bill then can be amended to allay those concerns, so that the bill is not seen to be infringing on the constitutional powers of other spheres of government. So therefore, the concerns and recommended amendments to the bill, Chair, then are discussed below. However, then before, Chair, I dive into the details of those clauses. We just received, I think, the Parliament Legal Advisor. They advised the NCOP on how to deal with this bill. So they said, however, prior to discussing content, the substance of the reservations by the President, it is crucial to seek guidance and dictates of Section 79.3 of the Constitution, read together with the NCOP rules on receiving public transport, public input, and remitted bills. Then the next bullet, it just says Section 79.3, the referral and remission does not relate to a procedural concern by the President. However, is on a single provision of a Section 76 bill, since the NLT Amendment Bill was passed as a Section 76 bill in terms of Section 79.3b of the Constitution. So therefore, Chair, joint rules and the NCOP rules of Parliament, therefore it detects that such a bill is, if the bill is remitted, the reconsideration must and is restricted to the reservations of the Presidents. Hence, the public input and consideration in that regard is restricted, therefore, to clause 7 only. That is in terms of the NCOP Rule 220 and the Joint Rules of 206, 2B, Roman figure 2, and 209. So then, Chair, with that said, Chair, then I go into the details of what the reservation of the President was. But in a nutshell, Chair, as I've presented, it was just to allocate those powers. The NLTA of 2009 had already made a finality that in terms of powers and functions, more municipalities, they've got powers to enter into new contracts in their jurisdiction. Then the bill, Chair, after with the inputs that we're receiving from the different provinces, the challenges that they had with the municipalities, then was such that maybe that function, maybe we need to reconsider, maybe giving it back to provinces and national, so that in case where there are gaps, then they can come in. However, then, Chair, we were then found as a department to be infringing on the constitutionality then of those of the powers and functions that are allocated or each sphere enjoys. So then on 7A, Chair, it says granting of contracting powers to the national sphere of government. So the concern then was raised that the national sphere may not generally assume local government functions for itself. And also that the difficulty with clause 7A in granting the powers to national is that it appears to confer on national government the power to conclude a wide range of contracts concerned, irrespective of whether they are national in scope, provincial, or merely local. Next slide. Then 7A, the department's response, therefore, Chair, was saying Schedule 4, Parts A and B to the Constitution allocates function of public transport to all three spheres, and that is national, provincial, and have concurrent powers, and local government has powers over municipal public transport. Then now, however, to allay the concerns, the department suggests that the subparagraph be deleted, as the national sphere has powers to intervene in terms of Section 5(6) of the Principal Act, and the Constitution provides for that intervention by the national sphere. In the case of provinces in Section 100, and by the provincial sphere, in the case of municipalities in Section 139 and 154 of the Constitution. Then on 7B, it's the topic was saying granting of contracting powers back to the provincial sphere of government. So the presidency concern similarly, Chair, was that the reservation were expressing that the effect of the proposed amendment will be that the relevant municipality does not meet the requirements and criteria to be prescribed by the minister. The provincial sphere may step in and conclude the contracts with the operators instead of the municipality. The concern is also that the provincial sphere may not generally assume a local government function for itself. So that was the contention, Chair, as well, that the department is being cautioned to say we cannot, after given the powers to municipalities, and then now go and say they need to qualify through a requirement and criteria. and then that they need to apply for that to the national minister to be granted. So we're therefore then cautioned, Chair, to say, again, provinces may not be allowed to just come into the local sphere and do certain functions. So all that must be done with caution, because the local authorities also enjoys their jurisdictional powers and functions in terms of the Constitution. Next slide. The department then, Chair, is of the view that there is no need to allocate the function to provinces as currently provided for in Clause 7B of the Amendment Bill. Municipalities will then enjoy their exclusive right to conclude new contracts in their areas. However, provinces can still perform this function on their behalf in terms of an agreement contemplated in Section 12.1 of the Principal Act. So Section 12 of the Principal Act, Chair, specifically provides for agreement between provinces and municipalities and between two or more municipalities, and the department is of the view that this provision is sufficient enough in enabling provinces to assist municipalities in areas where municipalities lack the necessary capacity to perform the function. Next slide. 7H, municipalities may only contract if they meet the requirement and criteria prescribed by the minister and subject to the amended Section 11.6 and the new Section 11.9. Also, the concern that was raised by the President's Chair is that these are concerns about the constitutionality of the provision, in that national and provincial government may not assume municipal functions for themselves and may only intervene where the requirements of Section 139 of the Constitution are met. They are also concerned about Section 11.6, which provides that provinces must continue to act as contracting authority for contracts concluded under the Transition Act until those contracts lapse, expire, or are cancelled or replaced. So the words "unless that function has been assigned to a municipality" are deleted. So the concern is that there is no flexibility, and the provision will apply even if the contract is exclusively for public transport within a specific municipality, and even if the municipality has the capacity to do so. Next slide. Then the department response also then, Chair, to that concern was that the department agrees that the proposed proviso to Clause 7H of the bill, which provides for prescribed requirements and criteria, be deleted. The department agrees that municipalities will have an exclusive right to conclude contracts in their areas. Next slide. On the next clause, Chair, exemption of the proviso to Section 11.1c, concerns expressed that Clause 7I will insert a new Section 11.1a to provide that municipalities may apply to the minister for exemption from the need to comply with the prescribed requirements and criteria before contracting. So also there were objections, Chair, or to that provision on constitutional grounds. Next slide. Therefore, then in reply, Chair, the department has corrected that to say Clause 7I should be deleted as a consequential amendment as the provision to Section 11.1c Roman figure 21 will be deleted. Next slide. Assignment of the contracting function, concerns expressed that Clause 7J will make a consequential amendment to Section 11.2 of the Principal Act relating to removal of the assignment of the contracting function. The referral objects to the removal of the power to assign, as the Constitution and other legislation provide for an assignment. So meaning the assignment provision will remain. The Department of responded that Clause 7J should be deleted as the assignment of the function will be retained due to the fact that the provision for municipalities to meet prescribed requirements and criteria will be deleted, Chair, in line with the caution that the presidency has provided. And then 7K, Chair, assignment of the contracting function, concerns expressed was that the 7K will delete section 11.3 and 11.5 of the Principal Act to remove the provisions on assigning the contracting function to municipalities. The referral questioned the constitutionality of these deletions, as the Constitution provides already for that provision, Chair. So that will stay. So next slide. Then the department agrees that clause 7K then should be deleted, Chair, in line with the Constitution. Then the next clause, Chair, assigning of contracting function. It says that clause 7A will effect a consequential amendment to section 11.4 of the Principal Act in connection with assignment. The department response was that yes, clause 7L should be deleted as the assignment of the function will be retained. Next slide. 7M, provinces acting as contracting authority for contracts concluded under the Transition Act. The concern is raised that clause 7M will amend section 11.6 of the Principal Act in connection with provinces continuing to act as contracting authority for contracts concluded under the Transition Act. Then the concern was that there is no flexibility to the provinces in this provision, and it will apply even if the contract is exclusively for public transport within a specific municipality, and even if the municipality has the capacity to administer the contract. So that is still a caution, a word of caution, Chair, that also was a concern that needed to be relooked at. Next slide. Then the department, in response to that, Chair, to the President, was that the department agrees that clause 7M should be deleted to leave section 11.6 of the Principal Act as it is. 11.6, Chair, it's where maybe the minister has got powers in line with the Constitution to intervene if, as and when it's necessary. Then the next slide. Then in conclusion, Chair, the department is of the view that the referral of the President's reservation based on the concerns of SALGA and the City of Cape Town will be removed by amending the bill as indicated above and shown in the attached proposed amendment document. Section 11(1)(a) Roman figure 4, Chair, of the Principal Act, or 6 of the Principal Act, provides that the national sphere of government is responsible for capacitating and monitoring provinces and municipalities that lack capacity or resources to perform their land transport function. The next slide. So furthermore, Chair, Section 11(a)(b) Roman figure 6 also provides that the provincial sphere of government is also responsible for building capacity in municipalities to monitor the implementation of this act. Given the capacity challenge in various municipalities, the department, together with province, will ensure that the above sections should be enforced to ensure that municipalities have the necessary capacity to undertake the contracting function as provided for in the Act and in the bill. Next slide. Then that comes to an end, Chair, then of my presentation, Chair, in how we've dealt, the department has dealt with the referral matter by the President's back into Parliament. In the last year, we were busy with the PCOT, the Portfolio Committee on Transport, doing those presentation in Parliament, Chair, to try and work with the Parliament Legal Advisor and the State Law Advisor in amending, correcting the bill the way we have been cautioned from the department perspective. So that has been done, Chair. So what the Parliament Legal Advisor and the State Law Advisor did, they then produced an e-list, which just shows, Chair, on the technicality of the work that then done by the lawyers behind the scene, of showing exactly in each line by line in the bill, where these changes then were effected as a consequential amendments, Chair, to respond to the word of caution that the presidency has sent to the department. So with all that, Chair, I wouldn't want to bore you with this e-list, Chair, but I'm sure you might have been given, Chair, a copy of it that goes with the presentation. If not, then your hand can request us. We will forward it as well, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Similane. I must admit we haven't received the e-list, and I'm sure, yeah, I'm will liaise with your office to have it forwarded to members. Colleagues, there you have it. It's a specifically focused amendment. I open the floor for comments or questions that you may have. I know it is just start of the process, so you will have lots of questions as we move along. I recognize Honourable van der Westhuizen. Please, Honourable van der Westhuizen, you may pose a question.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. If I may ask, and first, thank you very much also for numbering your slides. It does make it a lot easier. And if I may refer you to the slide number 5, where you give us the background, where you said that the one objective of the Principal Act was to consolidate functions at the local sphere where possible. And then you speak about municipalities being able to enter into new contracts, etc. And then the sentence, this provided challenges in that municipalities lacked capacity and disagreements occurred between provinces and municipalities. And I'm just wondering whether we can get a little bit more detail about these disagreements. Where did it occur? How were they addressed? And, you know, are you talking about contracts for public transport, etc.? I'm a little bit at a loss when you speak about those disagreements, and perhaps if you could also assist. You also say that you know, capacity needed to be built at local government level. To what extent would your department be entitled or even mandated by this piece of legislation to assist with that capacity building? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Any other questions or comments from members? Seems to be the only one. Mr. Honourable Seleko, I recognize you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Chair, I don't know whether I was listening correctly when it was said that I heard the word of that municipality and policing, and in terms of this particular bill, and I just wanted to know what would be the financial implication for municipalities, you know, in playing their particular role. Because why I'm asking that, we know in municipalities we've got underfunded mandates and unfunded mandates. And if someone would expect something from a municipality, what support are they going to give to municipality to make sure that they fulfill what is expected from the local sphere? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Seleko. Mr. Similane, please respond to those questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the members for those wise questions that makes us to think laterally in our work that we engage with. So, Chair, the issue of the contracting arrangement is that you remember there were those all order contracts that came from the Transition Act. Like, for example, if I can make practical examples, like your Golden Arrow in Cape Town, and this side in Pretoria, Joburg, you've got the PATCO buses. Those are the big companies that are leading in terms of government contracts. So those contracts, Chair, they come a long way from the old times. So also in terms of routing, where they go, probably they are still servicing the same routes during those times in the Transition Act. So those contracts, they are called the all order contracts. Those are the contracts then in terms of the Transition Act they were with the provinces. Provinces were responsible for that. Then came the public transport strategy and action plan in around before of 2007, Chair, also towards the preparation of the 2010 World Cup, where then municipalities were given funding in terms of the network grants and the PDOG grant, or the network grants, Chair, if I may say, yes, to correct myself there, to develop the BRTs that we see in our big cities in terms of integrated public transport networks. The municipalities, they were charged, and then there was funding, Chair, from Treasurer. They still that funding again on the network grants for municipalities to develop those BRTs. They are still getting those grants so long as they are still developing those BRTs to try and tighten up in the public transport space. So those contracts, Chair, they've been a challenge in the provinces because some of them, they are now on a month-to-month basis because of the challenges that maybe provinces as well, they are having with these contracts, because at times the subsidy grant that they receive from Treasurer, Chair, there's always a shortfall. As you know, the budgeting cycle of government, there have been budget cuts over the years, Chair, which also affect the contracting arrangement that provinces have to undertake in terms of their functions on those all other contracts. So they're going on for interim 1 month to month, Chair, which is not a desirable effect on the ground, because even those operators are not able to maintain their buses well. Then, Chair, those contracts now, when they expire, Chair, they are within the municipal jurisdiction. So what is supposed to be happening is that those those powers and function now, in terms of the National Land Transport Act, is that all new contracts need to only be given to municipalities. Only municipalities, in terms of the 2009 legislation, can enter into new contracts. So provinces, they are only dealing with those all order contracts. So now the transition from those contracts to be then taken down to municipality, the Act has got an assignment process then that needs then to be undertaken, so that at the end, those contracts, then they need them to be done by municipalities. However, municipalities, on the other hand, say, Chair, they are not ready, or they don't have, most of them, they're saying there's not having capacity to then start those contracts in their jurisdiction. However, the challenge, the biggest challenge that government has is the subsidy, the grant that comes from the Treasury and the budget cuts. I'm not directly a responsible, Chair, for those contract arrangements, but colleagues in the provinces and here at National who are responsible for that, they will go to town if they just share with us the challenges that they've been through. So that's where the challenge and the capacity gap, Chair, that is between municipalities and provinces. So some of the contracts may be on certain routes, as they lapse, then the city and the province, they need to then agree to say then how does those certain contracts then goes to municipalities, you know, in a proper manner. However, that's a technical exercise now, because the grant it's sitting at the provincial sphere. So which means there need to be some formal application now that there needs to be the Department of Transport together with the provinces. Then they need to write to National Treasury, so that if those grants then need to move from province to municipalities, then they need then to do so. So it's a process, Chair. It's not an easy or a neat process. It's a long challenge. So therefore, Chair, the role that the national and province are charged to play is to try and maintain and assist municipalities to then give them some capacity. Probably to say, if provinces, they continue to do those contracts, however, they must do them in line with the constitution, which means they must work with the municipalities and then capacitate them so that then it's just not open-ended contracts, but they work out a time frame under which then they can work with the municipality to say maybe at a certain time, then the municipality will be ready to take those functions. But however, Chair, the main challenge that the departments find themselves, particularly the provinces, is that the budget cuts has not enabled them, Chair, to be able to run those contracts in a very fruitful manner. Hence, when they go out on tender, you find that the tendering, open tender, the costing that comes with the bidders, it becomes very high to that of the grant that is given from Treasury. So then it becomes a challenge now. Then there's a big shortfall that then the province then needs then to put into the bill. So, Chair, that then is the challenge that national and province and also with the municipalities, they need to work in tandem and also then approach Treasury to see how this can then work out in a smooth manner. So that was my just contribution, Chair. Yeah, I know probably the issues, they are more complicated than that, Chair. If you can directly get those colleagues that are dealing with the contracting arrangement in the provinces and national, Chair. But from my side, Chair, that's all I can just clear or just give some highlight to the members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Similane. Thank you for the clarification. I think it is much more clearer also now in terms of what your response was. I recognize Honorable Kondlu. Shall be the last sort of comment or question. Honorable Kondlu.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Chair, a few questions for me. I think there are three. One, I think in reference to the contracts, particularly the one linked to the BRT, which my little understanding was that the BRT was a national project with the intention to sort of speak to the high-level objectives of the NLTA of trying to provide integrated transport. And now when we are at this point of the BRT implementation, question I'm interested in, has there been a review of this BRT, both internally by the National Department of Transport and any external evaluation, given that this particular project or national project would have then assisted the national sort of land transport to get the desired outcome of a multi-dimensional integrated transport that is working and all of that, and it would have been funded through state money so that we can see value for money, particularly now, as I think I'm understanding the presenter saying through this, you then allow it to be taken over by the municipalities. So I'm interested if there's been any review that actually has helped government to learn the lessons, but also to actually feed into the type of legislative amendments being proposed in this process. And again, my second question is the extent with all some of the things that Mr. Simelane is raising, which some are still, being navigated through the space, whether, are there any particular transitional arrangements that gets to be made in trying to mitigate, trying to legislate where there is still gray areas, in as far as securing, the future type of NLTA environment that we require. So maybe I think my third question, which was linked, I think also to the budget cuts, actually is part of what one is trying to understand, particularly as one of the justifications, which I think I really do understand if we start considering what we have been seeing, from the golden arrows of the day, into also some of the BRT, if one thinks of Go George and my city in the province, and what actually would be some of the demands to run and sustain those transport modalities. So I'm just I think concerned, Chair, and maybe the colleagues I can allay my concerns about the extent to which we use evidence-based sort of methods to actually pick up on what are the prudent legislative amendments we need to make based on experience of what government is practicing on one hand, and I'm using BRT as that particular example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Kondlu. Mr. Similani.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Honourable Nkondlo for the question, Chair. Yeah, it's not an easy one, Chair. I don't have all the answers regarding to that because on my side, I'm only just dealing with the legislation. But there are colleagues that are fully involved in the BRT network development in the cities. Yes, the Honourable Member quoted very well. It was a national project initiative, rather, since the 2007 Public Transport Strategy and Action Plan, particularly, you remember, during the advent of the 2010 World Cup. So that the call was that there is a need for efficient transport within cities so that they are away from the congestion. They've got a dedicated lane that then will push the high volumes of movement on our public transport space. So that was done. It got well coordinated during 2010, colleagues. In some of the cities, we really do get the benefits of that. Like you can see in Cape Town, in your Go George, and also in the city of Joburg. And then also in eThekwini, they're still pushing very hard in that front. They've done some infrastructural development within their road transport space. So it is going. Just to answer the Honourable Member, yes, I think from the National Department side, there has been a review of this program, Chair, although I don't have like a full detailed information of what has been the outcome. However, I think just on the off the cuff, Chair, what one just see is to say, given the funding challenge within government, probably then there is a need to underplay the infrastructure that is being developed on the BRTs, so that we find a creative African method or South African method of a hybrid BRT, not with this grandstands infrastructure that is costing government exorbitant overhead expenditure and also maintenance thereof, then finding that then there is a challenge when coming to the subsidy service now, to carry on giving the subsidy now to our traveling public. So I think the review has been on those matters, to the Honourable Member. So at the moment, yes, some cities are continuing to monitor and also to further the further phases of their BRT where they are at. But in terms of this review, I think the issue of the heavy infrastructure built in the public transport phase space, Chair, we expect maybe to see a leaner way on that, so that then the budget get spent spent more effectively and efficiently in terms of municipalities giving an efficient public transport in our space. Thanks, Chair. That's just my few words of comment on that front, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Similane. Colleagues, we've run over time of our scheduled meeting. I just like to ask your indulgence quickly because there's a further item that we need to deal with, that is our members. So allow me to just open the meeting now for comments of some of our stakeholders that's in the meeting. From Salga, is there any comment that you'd like to make with regard to the two presentations?
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. I'm Carl Punt, councillor and also representing Salga. I want to thank you for the recognition and the opportunity and the invitation to the Standing Committee. Chairperson, through you and to all the members of the Standing Committee, I want to introduce Mr. Unathi Ntonichi from Salga National Office to give input from Salga side to the bill. And I also want to reflect on, he will talk about the objections and concerns from Salga side, and also noting that Honourable van der Westhuizen already asked questions around the contractual functions, and also Honourable Seleku about the financial obligations. So Unathi will now talk about our meeting that we had around this bill. And through you, Chair, over to Unathi. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Punt.
Good afternoon to the honourable members of the legislature, to the councillors. Good afternoon. I assume, Chair, that I don't have much time, and I'll try just to be punchy and quick at the same time. I think, Chair, the first thing is for us as SALGA, beyond the issues of constitutionality, which I'll speak to just now, is we are concerned that in the Act, the National Land Transport Act, it's got, I think, 96 clauses. This bill amends 56 of them. That's more than half of the clauses that are in that Act. So we're concerned that maybe this is a sign that some of the intended objectives, if one goes back to the white paper, goes back to the public transport strategy, and actually to the Act itself, are not working. So this is not a simple amendment of one or two or three things that are not working. To us, this seems like an overhaul, and that perhaps in support of what the other members have been saying is maybe this whole issues of land transport in the country needs a rethink. And then on the issue of consultation, Chair, we note what Mr. Similane said about the issues of the legal opinion on restriction. However, our view is that surely restriction cannot exclude the parties that initiated the process that led to the president cautioning the portfolio committee on the bill. Surely that consultation, as restricted as it might be, cannot exclude those parties. And in this instance, those parties are SALGA in the city of Cape Town. And in the review by the portfolio committee, both SALGA and the city of Cape Town were excluded. Our communication that we sent to the portfolio committee in this regard was not even acknowledged, and we were never given an opportunity to engage. And the point also being that had the portfolio committee listened to and give proper credence to the submissions that were made by SALGA before the bill even went to the National Assembly the first time, then there would have never been a need for the president to caution the portfolio committee in the first place. So in terms of consultation, both from a qualitative perspective and a quantitative perspective, as SALGA, certainly we feel that we were never given an ear, both by the portfolio committee and in both instances. When I say both instances, I'm referring to the original public participation where we made submissions that were not heeded to, And secondly, I'm referring to the time post the president requesting the portfolio committee to review the bill. So we were never consulted at all. And even now, we only have a year, so we have an opportunity simply because this matter is presented through the National Council of Provinces. However, when the process was with the portfolio committee, we never received any opportunity to engage. Also, Chair, and another important point is that if you notice on I think slide 9 of Mr. Simelani's presentation, which refers to section 7A of the bill, he refers to the fact that they've agreed that that section must be either removed or amended on the basis that the minister would then intervene based on section 5, subsection 6 of the Act. First point is that that would then make the removal of section 7A a moot point, or it would be a cosmetic point, because then the minister is still allowed to do what he would have done through section 7 through another a provision within the Act. It means the removal is of no use. It doesn't help because the intention was to stop the minister in doing that. So a response that says the minister will do exactly the same thing through another section of the same Act doesn't help, and it's not a solution. Number two, it's not a solution because, in our view as SALGA, section 5.6 of the Act is itself unconstitutional in our view, even if it was not part of the original submission by the minister. Section 5.6 allows the minister to intervene directly on municipal issues, whereas in our view, section 139 of the Constitution does not allow a minister, except the finance minister, to go and intervene on issues of municipalities to the extent that a minister can instruct a municipal council on what to do. The Constitution does not make such a provision. So our view is that had we been allowed by the portfolio committee to engage, we'd have raised this issue with them to say, your proposal on how we deal or how we remedy section 7A of the bill is actually not a solution because you are relying on another clause, in our view, which is also unconstitutional. So as far as we're concerned, 7A is not a solution as proposed by the department or as passed by the National Assembly. Also, important to us is there are parts of the bill, and both the bill and the Act, that says that the minister must ensure something. But in relation to functions, some of the functions belong exclusively to municipalities, including issues of public transport. So how does the minister ensure integration of public transport when portions of the public transport exclusively are responsibility of municipalities? So we feel the language also there is completely unconstitutional. Rather, the minister should encourage integration, not ensure, because the idea of ensuring means that the minister can then intervene, and that relies on the same section of section 5.7 subsection 6, which we as SALGA believe is unconstitutional. Also, on the issue, maybe the last 2 points, Chair, is I think it's in either SONA 2021 or 2020, the president has been clear to say that there cannot be section 1 or intervention according to section 139 if section 154 of the Constitution has not been tried. In other words, the responsibility of national government and provincial government is first to assist before they intervene. So a clause, in our view, that allows either the province or the municipality, the national government or a province to intervene without any reference to them having assisted first, because we cannot deal with these two clauses of the Constitution separate from each other. And therefore, the manner in which we legislate must demonstrate the relationship between the two clauses. In other words, assist first, and if therefore the assistance is not bearing fruit, then you can intervene. So we can't deal with these two clauses separate from each other. Also, what is important for us as SALGA is that what is a new contract? Because if these contracts are to, in whatever form, are to be given to municipalities or devolved into municipalities, and these contracts have been continuing and been done by provinces or national government, in our view, that's not a new contract. Those contracts have already been existing. The fact that they now have to be devolved is a separate matter, but they are existing contracts. That's why there's a legal case where the Gauteng Department of Roads and Transport issued a new contract and was litigated by the South African Bus Operators Association, and they succeeded in their litigation because there's a tripartite agreement that says those operators have a first right of refusal on any of these new contracts where those contracts are being issued. Then the last point is, it's clear from Mr. Smelane's presentation that there's underfunding of these contracts. And I do know a couple of provinces that are topping up the subsidy through their own equitable share. So if these contracts are already on a deficit, why are these contracts being devolved, or there's an intention to even devolve them to municipalities when they are clearly underfunded? It's just to create even a bigger burden for municipalities. Why is there a suggestion that municipalities must now approach National Treasury about a deficit on contracts that currently have nothing to do with municipalities? So in our view, Chair, we don't support the bill as is because it's not a solution. And some of the issues in our view that the president has sought to address are not being addressed adequately by the proposed changes as the bill being passed by the National Assembly. So, Chair, that's I think, without wasting too much of your time, that's the totality of the submission. And we appreciate the indulgence from the members, and we appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Ntonsinchi. Sorry. Unati, thank you so much for your input. I can assure you that we're going to invite you to make a more detailed submission to our committee, and we'll further invite you to our engagement when we're going to deliberate on the bills. So we value your input and the concerns raised. And I think it will benefit us when dealing with our position in terms of our submission to the NCOP. And this is but only the first of further engagement we will have. But I'm just going to allow Mr. Simelane, if you want to briefly respond to some of the comments you've made, and then we will move on to the next stakeholder to make a comment or two. Mr. Simelane, if you wish to respond to some of the comments, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity and the comments that have been made by Mr. Mtoninchi, Unati. Chair, just on my side, I don't remember us excluding SALGA or City of Cape Town in providing their inputs. But yes, I remember that when we in Parliament, they did come and make their inputs there. But then still the bill, the legislature, it came out as it is currently in the bill, which now then we've been cautioned by the president to relook into that matter. So it's not like that matter was not looked at in Parliament. It was, Chair, but the members, I think at the time, they just felt that maybe there's nothing wrong into the other spheres coming to assist municipalities in terms of intervention. However, now we're just being cautioned to say we need to be careful with the kind of intervention that is the upper spheres we do in municipalities. It must always be on the word of caution, given regard that each sphere enjoy its constitutional power and function. And so, Chair, public transport is a constitutional function in terms of the schedule, the schedules in the Constitution, that it's the function of the municipalities in terms of public transport. So issues of new contract, municipalities, if they want to provide an efficient services, then they need to plan accordingly on their ITPs and BRTs to provide an efficient service to the people. With also then the support that then they will receive from province and national in terms of funding and treasury, of course. If there's a financial gap, then municipalities, then we need to all lobby to the national treasurer more funding so that then the efficient service that municipalities are endeavoring to provide for our people, it's then is then achieved, Chair. So in the spirit of cooperative governance, that is the spirit in which we are approaching this bill with, Chair. So that is all, Chair, that I can say. And also on Section 5.6, Chair, the minister won't just impose to the municipality, as we are cautioned now. Whenever we advise to the national minister, it's always on the word of caution. The minister just don't come to impose. On Section 5.6, it categorically says, Chair, to say the minister may intervene when a province or municipality cannot or does not fulfill an executive obligation or authority. Then the minister is given that power to say, then he can then maybe give a directive to, because if in parliament there is a crisis in terms of transport matters on the ground, the first point of call, parliament, they call our national minister because he's the only national minister of transport. And then he'll go to his counterparts in the provinces, the MECs. And then the MECs will dive down to their portfolio committee members within the municipalities that are responsible for transport or public transport, Chair. So in a nutshell, that is the spirit of cooperative government, Chair, that we are trying to frame into this legislation. So we have agreed on the word of caution from the presidency. So we have corrected the bill in the manner in which it does. But then if SALGA, they are still not happy, Chair, then the members, they can call constitutional expert in parliament as they had done so during when the NLTA was being developed. So they had cautioned us to say, look, if we allocate functions to municipalities, we must not allocate to certain type and give and leave out some because we'll be discriminating. So then what happened in 2009, then all the functions were consolidated, particularly the contracting, the planning and the regulation. Municipalities are given those powers and function. But also there, Chair, it does not mean that they can just take them the next day. Then the issue of assignment as well, it comes in so that then thorough checks are done for the readiness of that municipalities. The powers to do regulation, like the provincial regulatory entities are doing in the provinces, municipalities have been given that function so that then if they feel they are ready, also to regulate within their space, once they've done their planning to say, to determine, to say how many public transport vehicles we need on these certain routes, then they can do so within their powers and function that they've been given in terms of regulating also public transport. So Chair, then when we're trying then to just correct that in terms of going back into province and national, then we're cautioning, Chair. So we have just corrected the bill in terms of constitutional mandate, Chair, and the cautiousness that the top spheres need to always approach with caution when they come to other spheres to do certain functions. Hence now in this contracting arrangement, Chair, we are the bill seek now to say if there are any capacity gaps in certain jurisdiction of municipalities, provinces can come in, but in consultation on the Section 12.1 agreement within the spheres of government. The main purpose, Chair, is to ensure that there is regular service to our public. That's it, Chair. So if maybe SACA, they're still not happy with that, Chair, then probably in the NCOP and P Court, probably constitutional minds can also be brought maybe to refer that discussion and debate this matter, Chair. But that's all my contribution I can say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Simelane. I recognize Mr. Sekudu quickly. Mr. Sekudu.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I won't be long, but I think it will be appropriate and fair for this meeting to get two sides of the story, particularly on two matters. One, in relation to consultations. It is not correct and untrue to say SALGA wasn't consulted. Towards finalizing the bill before it was referred back by the President, SALGA and specifically an official before Nati joined SALGA was consulted during that process. Even SALGA is a member of the COTO, which is a Committee of Transport Officials of the Department of Transport. And they are a member of that committee. And whenever these matters are discussed, they make inputs in that forum. In the last COTO meeting, it was resolved that there should be a bilateral session between SALGA and the department. I can put it to you, Chairperson, as a fact that on the 6th of March this year, we had a meeting with SALGA and we had meeting minds to say that, one, they would support that the bill proceed as such and allow that the portfolio committee and NCOP to focus on the matters that have been raised by the president. Secondly, the matters that have been raised, which SALGA have raised around the definition of new contracts and so forth. We've accepted the fact that the National Land Transport Act, it is a living document, and we are accepted that we are living in a changing environment. And somehow the National Land Transport Act would have to be changed. But a separate process will then have to be followed to deal with the matters, Chair. But I thought it is best that when we leave this meeting, we have to put the other side of the story, not to get one side of the story, Chair. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kudu. I think I'm going to just allow the last comment on this matter. Mr. Mtontini, I'm going to give you the last word on this and then we'll move from here. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to get in. Thank you so much. I don't want to get to a dialogue with Mr. Sikudu or Mr. Smelane, but I stand by what I said. And just to reiterate, Chair, that is SALGA available to you to talk to us and invite us, Chair, and would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Just lastly, is the Mr. Ahmed still on in our meeting from the department? Yep. Any of our legal advisors like to make a comment at this stage?
Nothing from me. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Advocate Leroux. So, colleagues, as I was saying earlier, is that this is just but the start of our engagement. We will have more engagements like this and with many other stakeholders as well. So I'd like to thank you for your participation and the sort of effort that the department and its officials have made to present to us the content of the two pieces of legislation. Advocate Mkhatu and your team, thanks a lot. And if there are any clauses of further clarification, I'm sure we will be able to get into touch with you to provide us that clarity, as demonstrated by your presence here today. And it is much appreciated. From SALGA, thank you for your presence here today and your input. And as I was saying earlier, is that this is but our first engagement with each other, and we will have further engagements and where we will be able to dissect the different clauses and formulate a response from a provincial perspective to our delegates that serve on the NCOP. So I would like to thank you also for allowing this meeting to go beyond the scheduled time. I appreciate it very much, and I'm very grateful for your indulgence. For our members, I would like you to stay behind a little longer so that we could simply just chart the way beyond today in terms of how we're going to deal with the piece of legislation. For all our guests on the platform and the departmental officials from the National Department and Provincial and SALGA, you are free to exit the meeting. Colleagues, we will stay behind for a few more minutes just to clarify and chart our way forward with regard to these two bills. Thank you, Advocate Bahotu and Mrs. Similani and your team. You're welcome to leave the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks so much.
Chairperson.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, from my side, thank you so much that you've been very patient and your sort of participation in the meeting, and I think it was very helpful. But that, having said that, and I think the next step is that our 3 bills that we are currently dealing with, the one we dealt with a week ago, and then the 2 of today. So we have a few suggestions here, and I'm going to just hand over to you before we decide on public participation. The idea is that we engage POC in terms of what they can do for us in terms of reaching the stakeholders. I must say that these bills are fairly technical, and they are clearly defined stakeholders that we need to reach and engage with, and perhaps we should just confine ourselves at this stage, on the first step of the process. And I think Mr. Woodnell is on the line, and I was in a meeting earlier today where he presented from a social media perspective as to what they can do to assist us to reach our intended audience. And I think I like the new sort of approach, and maybe you can share with us what they can do for us. And also, Siti Maletu is here from the POC, what they can do. And then we're obviously going to we're going to also go the traditional way in terms of advertising in the various regional papers, and also in the Metro, of course, for comments on all 3 bills. Okay, so I'm going to just put it that way. POC, Temeletu, are you there?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes. So, Chair, you wanted me to explain what role we are going to play as PEO in terms of these bills. Is that what I heard from?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chair.
I think
Yes, Chair?
we're not going to go the traditional way in terms of how it dealt with the copyright amendment bill, or how we will go about with the expropriation bill. This is, directed at specific stakeholders, these bills, and we need to reach those stakeholders that's directly affected.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair. So in this case, Chair, like I say, we will just do anything that the committee wants us to do. We are ready to assist in any way that you can want us to do. But the main thing, Chair, is that we will first meet with the procedural officer and discuss, like you are saying now, that this is a specialized kind of bills. So we can see together which kind of stakeholders can we combine. Johannes, do you have your hand up, or should I continue?
Can I agree? Jan?
Chairperson, yes, thank you. I and Kaya and myself had a discussion already. I have submitted the list of stakeholders on all 3 bills to them, and the letters has been drafted. So if we do get the go ahead now, they will be then sending out the letters to all the various stakeholders on all 3 the bills, and then also through the community development or community workers development contact stakeholder list. They will then also make further or put the word out on the bill. That's the involvement of PEO, and then Matthijs Oerendal then will then explain the social media aspect of how we will get social media involved. Our letters include specific invitations to SALGA, as well as to all the district and the municipalities, as well as to the Western Cape government to make comments on the bill. Chairperson, then I'm tomorrow meeting with the IT people, compiling a questionnaire that will be linked to our website, providing detail or background on the bills, and then for stakeholders, for public, for any interested parties, if they do visit our website, that they could then indicate whether they would like to make a written comment, whether they would, or they can then make a written comment and then submit a request to come and make an oral submission to the committee if they wish to do so. But that's just another link from the social and the IT part of it. Chair, that's then up to the point where the committee then will decide whether we're going to do public hearings and then where we want to do it and in which papers we need to advertise.
Okay, thank you, Johan, for that information. Tell me the return date for submissions with regard to this communication that will be sent out to stakeholders. Was that be informed by our mandate?
That's correct, Chairperson. Yes.
Do we have any clarity as far as that is concerned?
Chairperson, if I'm correct, the negotiating mandate needs to be in by middle of June, and I think the final mandate will be about 2 weeks later. Yeah.
Okay, so so when are we going to end of April? 3 weeks from now?
I think that's a good time. We could even make it 4 weeks, Chair, because what the problem with the community papers is that if I would send to them an advert now for placing, they would say, well, we don't make the deadline. You'll have to wait another week before it gets advertised.
Okay.
So I would say at least three weeks to maximum 4 weeks. That would give us time to then deal with it. Yes.
Okay. So we can we use a round robin with the members in terms of the advertisement that's going to be placed and the letters that are going to be sent out to the various stakeholders by end of business tomorrow? The letters at least that you've already formulated with Kaya?
I can actually flight it for you now quickly, Chair, if you wish to. But otherwise, I can send it out to them. It's our standard letter to just give a back quick the objectives of the bill, and then provide them with the detail on where the feedback should come to and the deadlines. Yes.
Okay. Can we do that by tomorrow close of business? Okay.
I'll get it out to the members. Yeah.
And the advertisement by the end of the week?
I can also send the advertisement out tomorrow, and then we can get feedback, and then we can start getting quotations in. Yes.
Okay. I'd like that. Members, is that acceptable to you if you do it that way?
Fine, thank you.
Agreed, Chair.
Right, thanks a lot. Honorable Sileku, all good?
All good, Chair. All good.
Thank you so much. Okay, but that's it, colleagues, and I don't think that there's anything further. If there's, would I've missed out something? Please, I haven't gotten to resolutions yet, but anyway, I recognize Honorable van der Westhuizen.
Sorry, this is for when we come to a resolution.
Okay, thank you. As far as that part is concerned, it is concluded. Resolutions, colleagues. It's the last part of our agenda. Honorable van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. May I ask that we be served with a copy of the road traffic National Road Traffic Act with all the amendments to date. I see there have been some amendments. I find it sometimes very difficult to just read the amendment bill, but not being able to refer to the original or the primary bill. So if we could get all the primary legislation, but particularly where there have been some amendments, versions which include or incorporate the amendments to date, that would be my proposal for a resolution.
Thank you, Andrew van der Westhuizen. And I think it's a good idea because many of us weren't in the committee prior when those bills was served, or in the National Assembly, so that can be done. Johan, you will see to that?
100%, sir.
Oh, good. Okay, anything else, colleagues? Then allow me to thank all members for your patience and your participation, and to our legal advisors, Advocate Leroux, and the other colleagues who were in the meeting for so long. Your presence and your contributions is highly appreciated. To Siraj and to Candice for your support, and Mfundo for your also your able support in terms of the background administration is concerned, and lastly to Johan for putting everything together and for your guidance and support as far as these matters are concerned. So with that said, colleagues, I declare this meeting officially closed, and may you have a restful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.